All right. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is David Patrick Harry with Church of the Eternal Logos, and I am joined by my good friend, Chase Haggard. How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much. I'm glad you dressed for the occasion. I don't even want to bring up what happened backstage.
Oh, my gosh.
Let's not get into inside baseball.
Please.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'd hate to be put on blast in front of everybody. But clearly you came here prepared. You look fabulous. I'm loving the color scheme and the ties. Here, let me take your name off there so people can see that beautiful green tie, polka dotted, blue undershirt, gray blazer. Looks phenomenal, brother. So tonight, and really this gets tied with what we're talking about. I mean, an artistic display, right? Where do the lines of art and culture end? Tonight's title that I've kind of brought forth. Now, this is an open panel, so eventually we're going to open this up. So anybody watching, you guys can hop on in. But I kind of reached out to you. You are a musician. You play music. And I wanted to talk a little bit about Orthodox artistry, being an artist, art in general, and how that relates to secular culture. I mean, what is art? I'm sure that's a question that I was going to open up with here. Like, what exactly is art, and how do we as Orthodox Christians engage in the secular culture, potentially to enlighten it, transform it? But yeah, so maybe we can open up here, like for you and your artistry, how do you view the role of art? What is art?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that art itself is going to be taking something kind of in the mind's eye, you know, whether it be just something visual and emotional response to that, something imaginative, and it's putting it into something that's can last forever, or can, you know, be that solidified moment itself. That's what art is. It can be something that's reflective of frustration, beauty, triumph, disgusting things, you know, filth, anger, hatred, things like that. And so I think it's, simply put, it's taking something in our mind's eye and giving it a solidified place in time that other people can then connect to.
Mm. You know, one of the reasons why I thought that question is actually very poignant is if you kind of look at intellectual history and the movements into, well, those that began to challenge the sort of Victorian era in the 19th century and moving into the 20th century, it was a redefining of what art was. And so in the contemporary sense, art is filled with political opinions, political transformative concepts. And so historically, when you look at art, art was about beauty, art was about transcendence, art was about values and really tradition. The Renaissance begins to challenge that. So when you see the Renaissance, we start seeing the influence of Hermeticism, magical concepts, the esotericism, where we start to see more scandalous depictions of female and male bodies, and this sort of push to challenge the limits of what art is, I think has come full circle to the point, and now in the 21st century, you know, it's what is art? Well, apparently it can be anything. It can be Lady Gaga throwing up on or having a chick throw up on Lady Gaga on stage. This is art, and this is supposed to be something that's refined and appreciated. And so the question then is, as Orthodox Christians, you know, we're not hermits. And so just fleeing into the woods and not engaging with secular culture, that's not the way to go. But how do we engage in art? And I have some opinions on that, but what is your approach to your art? Like, obviously you're not singing, you know, you're not doing Orthodox chants. That's not your music. So what is your art? Maybe describe a little about that. Again, people can go check your stuff out over on Instagram. And how do you approach it? And how does it relate to your faith?
Yeah, and I think that you hit the nail on the head that art has become something very, you know, political. It's always been used as a tool, and it reflects the philosophy and the worldview at the time, and people trying to solidify those ideas into, you know, a moment of time other people can access. And in my art, you know, I do indie rock stuff. I write original lyrics. I also do gypsy jazz. And with my lyrics and my vocals, I do secular music, but it's meant to be subversive. You know, I have lines about you know, my right foot stepping forward, my left foot's pulling back, and a voice kept crackling, boy, you're right on track. You know, it's demons messing with someone, and it's meant to be something subversive in a positive way. And I think that my approach to art is to I think there's two options really. You're either going to glorify something or you're going to rebuke something in your art.
Right.
And you're either going to glorify sin, death, and destruction, glorify God, or you're going to rebuke sin, death, and destruction, or you're going to rebuke God through your music. I don't think there's that many options for it. So,
so how do you approach your art? You talked about maybe some of the lyrics, kind of placing your values into it. How does it relate to your spirituality? How does it relate to your understanding as being an Orthodox band? How does it relate to the idea that God gave you certain gifts and you're trying to utilize them?
yeah, I think it filters through all of it, obviously, because it's, you know, your worldview is going to dictate every single thing. So when I look at the way that I go about my art and the way I go about my music is always going to be, how is this going to affect the listener? Because we can look back at times like Father Turbo Qualds has brought up that a lot of the hip hop music now is actually used as a weapon against certain cultures and against certain peoples to get a mantra in their head of, you know, I'm going to stack that money. I'm going to go hurt these people. I'm going to go sell drugs, whatever it is. So I approach it, if it's got lyrics, as what would be a small positive mantra in here? What's the story I'm trying to get across? And I always try to put myself in the listener's shoes to see how it would affect them. And if that's going to be positive, even if it is something for someone to hear. You know, I have a song that's kind of presuppositional. It's gross. And the chorus is, if it feels good, then why don't you do it? If nothing's by design, morality is what's convenient. And if that makes them uncomfortable, that's a good thing. So I always think about what it is from their perspective.
Right. Yeah, I was reading today actually about Andy Warhol and some of the movements during the counterculture, and he had this flat apartment in New York that was famous among some of the countercultural figures like Allen Ginsberg, William Burroughs, many of these transgressive, whether they be beatniks or countercultural people, Timothy Leary, the Beatles, John Lennon was there. But it talked about how everything that they did inside Andy Warhol's flat had to do with nudity. So he would have these private films, transgressive sexuality. He would film men having sex. He would film transgenders. He would anything that was transgressive. This was considered art, and this is part of the sort of the surrealist movement, Dada, abstract expressionism. That there's contemporary art is a rejection of order, and this gets tied really to a spiritual premise. And so when you're trying to bring in lyrics that are highlighting presuppositions or potential value structures, I would say that concept, again, is rooted with our Christianity and the idea of logos and potential order. You look at atonal music is another, it's also indicative of this general theme that it's tied really with occult values, people that believed in chaos, and chaos was transgressive, and chaos is then how they're going to revolutionize society. And so we looked at our society today, and that's really it. And so you're talking about being subversive. Well, what is subversive in 2023? It's actually like being Christian, being traditional, believing in God, believing in objective morality. These things are actually considered transgressive. And yeah, so it's really interesting. When I think of like orthodoxy and how we can engage in art, I think that one of them is just to bring beauty. Maybe we could speak a little bit about aesthetics, generally speaking. When you look at culture, you look at architecture, like if you look at Byzantium, for example, and Orthodox art or Byzantine art, beautiful architecture, not just iconography. I'm talking about just cultural artifacts. It was beautiful, sacred space, proper dimensions, sacred geometry. You look at today, they basically do the exact opposite on purpose, intentionally. And so for you and your music, I mean, how do you relate to this atonal development within music? How does music and order and concept of logos and Jesus Christ, how do these things relate for you with music?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, because I think there's a great transcendental argument for God from the objectivity of music itself, just like with numbers. And the atonal stuff, it's interesting because that itself, just like Dialethian logic, right? What does it appeal to? The classical laws of logic.
Right.
It still appeals to them.
Right.
Atonal music still appeals to these things. So even when you look at a painting, or I'll stick with music because that's what I know, when you look at music and you have certain little cells of music, right? A root, a third, and a fifth, little triads that make chords. These things and the way these frequencies stack together, they're discovered out in nature. And our voice is something that's a kind of a side note. Our voice is actually if we were to both sing a note, there's other notes implied up and down in the harmonic series. And these are all created things based off the Logi, God's divine ideas of different things, of, music, art, all these things.
Right.
And so any type of art, whatever it's going to be, just like anything in life, I believe that even if you're trying to deny God, you're using the building blocks that are pointing towards the logos, the building blocks of logic, reason, right, mathematics, numbers, music theory, tonalities, harmony, and painting, color, symmetry, shape, all of these things. You're using these building blocks like Lego blocks that God created for us to go and play with. So no matter what someone's doing, even if it's the most disgusting, self-defeating art, quote unquote, it's still going to be appealing to God and utilizing these things. And I think that beauty is going to be putting these things together in a way that is harmonious with God and pointing towards him. Even if it is some jazz music that has some dissonant stuff, it can still,
right,
be a beautiful
I personally
thing.
like jazz. But we also could objectively look at how jazz was a way in which propagating of new values, of new sexual relationships, of the use of potential inebriating substances. So I personally like jazz. I like classical music.
Well,
I
it
like,
had a zeitgeist. It was part of a
yes,
zeitgeist, right? Where throughout that time, people were started using, flat thirds over a major third, which is dissonant. They started using um, diminished chords, which is stacked minor thirds, which doesn't resolve. And so it is a reflective of the spirit of the time,
right.
of this shaking up of things. So I don't think that there's any, and I know you're not saying this, but some people say, oh, there's certain styles of music are inherently evil. No, they're not. And then they'll bring up, oh, a tritone was banned by the church. No, the church just didn't sing stacked minor thirds because it's super disharmonious.
Right.
It's not that it's evil, but it had a time. And now what's interesting is we look at the music of the time. Everything, all the pop music is what's called quantized. It's all right on the grid. It's all mathematically perfect. Humans don't play that way. There's little imperfections that give things character.
Right.
And it's all very formulaic just to get earworms in your head as a mimetic tool
Right.
to perpetuate some ideas. And it's lost all its heart. And all it is now is just the earworms with disgusting, negative things. And that's why I think people are starting to gravitate towards more avant-garde music. People love bluegrass.
Yes.
Now. Bluegrass is having a huge
love.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We were
Americana
listening to bluegrass
music.
in Montana the whole time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, love bluegrass and Americana music.
Yep. And that itself, right? It's mostly harmonious. Little moments of the blue is the blue notes, little outside of things, but it's expressive. It's simple, and it has human characteristic to it. It's not perfectly on the grid. And now I think the spirit of the age is everyone mechanistically falling into line and being on this grid. And that's reflective of the mass-produced music we have now, which is heartless and soulless.
Right. And you look at the lyrics within that soulless music, and it's promoting degeneracy. You got Cardi B. I mean, just listen to what's going on the radio, and it would be transgressive to us, to our value systems. And that's where can you as Orthodox engage with secular culture? Well, I think creating beautiful things, whatever that may be. If you are a painter, if you are a singer, if you're a guitarist, or you're a jazz musician, and even for me, I'm not artistic in the sense of traditional sense, but what I look as research and writing and coming up with theses and presenting ideas, to me, that is an art. And I try to make sure I do that to the best of my abilities. And I look at that as a sort of spiritual expression of myself due to God-given gifts. And so it's not, most people wouldn't look at that, quote unquote, as art, but I think you can take an Orthodox perspective and look at what it is that you do. Maybe you're a plumber. That can be your art. It can be a way in which you express yourself to the best of your ability and creating something beautiful and harmonious. Because when we look at our society, disharmony is dominant. We're looking, everywhere you look, it seems like there's disharmony.
Yep. And it's interesting because you even have the, you want to do more fitness stuff and have a separate fitness outlet because you're very into that.
Yeah.
That's an art that then you can use as a segue to these people who they know nothing about this channel. They know nothing about philosophy, theology, Orthodox Christianity. And you are working with them on fitness. You're going through different fitness plans, and the way you go about this can be an artistic way where you're utilizing these things that God gave us to use in a way that's harmonious with him. And I think a good example of this biblically is, music itself. That didn't start with humans. What were the first beings that were singing that we know of? It was angels, and they were singing, worshiping God.
Right. No, happy birthday to Seraphim Goose. Congratulations, brother. Many years to you. But yeah, you're totally right. And what you're hitting at, something that I think is really worth bringing up, in that your life is art. Your life is an expression of yourself. The way you dress, the way you speak to people, the way you make eye contact, the way you shake hands, the way you hold yourself, the way you create things. And that's where I was trying to make a point, is that creativity is art, whether it be a construction worker, whether it be a blues musician. It doesn't matter what type of creativity is it, and our world needs more creativity. Now, are we moving towards the end times? Maybe so, or we're definitely moving there. Are we in it? I don't know, but that doesn't mean that you should just give up and be nihilistic and have despair. No, the reaction is to create more beauty. And this is a way in which you have more agency in your life. People don't think about that as a religious form of agency, but it really is. This is a spiritual opportunity to be more creative, create more beautiful things, inspire more people in whatever way you can. It could be talking about Christ. It could be talking about your diet. It could be talking about fasting. Doesn't matter what it is. There's all these opportunities. If we start to think of ourselves as art and our life as art, other people will see that in a society in which the degradation of aesthetics is everywhere, whether it be buildings, whether it be the way people dress, the informality of society, sweatpant culture. It's like just by the way you dress right now is challenging the aesthetic of disharmony.
Yeah, and it's interesting you bring that up, because when we look at how art affects or how we can affect our lives and the things around us by making small, quote unquote, small things artistic, right? Being a plumber, the way you dress, whatever it is, the art that we receive and that we take in is very impactful on us, right? I mean, was it Father Seraphim Rose who called pornography the iconography of Satan, or iconography of the devil?
Yep.
Yeah. And I think that's a very important thing where, again, I said before, sometimes I think people have a silly view and they go, oh, like, oh, jazz is this, it's bad. Only classical is good. That's pretty silly, because jazz actually, when you look at it, it's very classical in a sense. But it's the way that you utilize it. Just like speech isn't bad, the way I utilize my speech can be bad. But what art we receive, it definitely impacts us on a very deep level. If me and you were listening to Cardi B all the time, we could still be Orthodox Christians, but I guarantee you we would have very different things going on in our head.
Right. Absolutely. And that's a fact. And that's partly why art is so subversive in wherever it's been. And it's really the last 2 centuries that have hijacked art as a way in which to invert society's values. Again, in the book that I'm reading, John Lennon admits that the Beatles from the inception knew that their job was to revolutionize the way the youth thought about the world and to change their political values, the way they engaged in sexual relationships, the way they identified themselves. And that's exactly what they did. And the same thing is true when we look at our culture now. And that's why, again, using this as an opportunity to create beautiful things. I saw the other day that, there's this ugly concrete building, and the way to beautify it was to put more like abstract art on it. And it looked more ugly. It just looked, it was a little bit, it had some color, but it wasn't like beautiful. We don't create beautiful architecture because it inspires people. And the point of the world that we live in is to not inspire, but take the spirit of inspiration away from you and make you more depressed and make you more likely to potentially commit atrocities or be depressed or not get out of your room or just use, Uber Eats and stay in your sweatpants and watch Netflix. It's like food is an opportunity for art. If you're into culinary things, if you're into baking and cooking, this is an opportunity. And then the nutrients of the food that you use, this is a way in which to use your Orthodox spirituality, your Christian spirituality, to make beautiful things in the world. Oh man, you ever go to that restaurant, that chef there, he uses the best quality products. Like everything's organic, everything's phenomenal, everything's fresh. This is challenging our system, and this is art. But people don't think of it that way, generally speaking.
Yeah, and even your Instagram, right? What are you looking at? Are you looking at yoga pant ladies, or are you looking at yoga pant guys? I don't know what the guy verse is. Probably not yoga pant guys. I doubt that's a big thing.
Yeah, it's funny too. Like with bodybuilding, the whole joke is, oh, I'm going to get big and strong and girls are going to want to be with me. Never is that way. It's always other dudes like, bro, you lift? How much you bench, bro? Like you're looking big, man.
What are you doing later? What are you doing later?
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know what exactly turns women on. Probably at this point, it's like showing your Mercedes Benz or like showing like flashing wealth or, a sort of lifestyle, appealing to a lifestyle. But Yeah, I think art, and you look at again the how it's tied to the intellectual zeitgeist, as you said, of whatever century, whatever time period you're in. And you look, for example, Jay's done a lot of stuff about Dave McGowan's work at Laurel Canyon. And you look at a lot of the bands coming out of the early 60s, whether it be the Doors or Zeppelin or the Beatles.
They're the Dead.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, it's all influenced, part of a zeitgeist to revolutionize culture. And so we as Orthodox shouldn't run away from secular culture, but engage it even more strongly and use it as an opportunity to express who we are. And like I said, I feel like a broken record, but create more beautiful things. This is the opportunity of a lifetime.
Yep. Well, remember, because we're pretty similar age. I mean, we're a couple years apart. But you remember the angst years of the late 90s music? In the mid 90s music, the
like grunge music.
Yeah, but it was post grunge, right? I'm talking Dashboard Confessional.
Oh, okay.
I'm talking Blink 182.
Yep.
Remember how like actual emo everyone was, and
Yeah.
how angsty everyone was? It affects day-to-day lives, and something people, especially in the United States, need to realize is that we don't have control over the geopolitical machine that the United States is. And it's terrible. And we need to pray for our country and for all the countries, and pray that we stop interfering in other places, obviously.
Right.
And we can't control that no matter how hard you vote, right? But
vote harder.
Vote harder, yeah. But the cultural export of the United States, even on an independent level, people in Europe, people in South America, people look at the United States as culture and what we're putting out even on an individual level, and it impacts their culture. So if you're some kind of artist, or if you aren't a quote unquote artist, everyone is, like you were bringing up before, support people that have a good message.
Right.
Shill their music. Pay $5 to buy their album instead of listening just on Spotify, because Spotify gives independent artists 0.0.039 cents a stream.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
So independent artists are getting that have beautiful music. There's a really good artist named Natalie Lane. She's a Protestant artist. She's got great lyrics. There's nothing weirdly theological in there. It's just positive music, very good. She gets not even a penny every time you listen to a song. You want good art? Pay $5 for their album.
Yeah.
Buy their t-shirt. Little things like that. Share it with your friends, because this impacts our society. You've done those streams about memetics, and I think that that's a really powerful message. Music is a memetic tool. It's a memetic device.
Well, Twitch 307 right here throws in $10, says music is the language of the creator. And I would agree that partly one way in which Orthodoxy, that's why we don't use instruments for liturgical worship, but because the human voice is mimicking, that's made by God. All the other instruments are made by us that are really trying to appeal to exactly what he's hitting at, this language of the creator. There is harmony, there is beauty. Music is discovered. We don't invent it. We didn't invent the tones. We didn't invent the chords. We are discovering God in the world, in his order.
Yep. And something interesting, when we get a little deeper into the theology there's a logi, a divine idea for music itself. And so there's an uncreated idea of it, and then God created music itself, and that's the harmony of that. There's an uncreated energy there, so it's not some platonic form just floating around. But when we engage in that, we are using a communication device that is it's much more subtle. Even though it can feel loud, it is much more subtle what happens to our nous, to our hearts, to our minds when we listen to these things.
Right.
And it is definitely it is a language. That's why people call it a language.
Right.
Oh, I don't speak the language of jazz. I don't speak the language of blues, a classical player may say. But it's all this language of order, and it can do very powerful things to people and in people.
And when you're talking about contemporary music fitting on the grid, it made me think about, again, the sort of artificial intelligence of our society. Of you look at AI. I just did a stream with Cyprian Van Armani talking about AI art. music. Right now, the AI is going to be able to do all this stuff, but it can't express your heart. You're getting at the news. You're getting at an anthropological understanding of who we are as people. It can't reproduce the imperfection, so to speak, but actually the uniqueness. And we can see how God, we're not robots. We are in a way different, or maybe imperfections aren't necessarily imperfection, but we may perceive them as. But music is an opportunity to be more human, and we see the system's going to continually try to take this away more and more and more, and we have to fight against the dying of the light in regards to create more things, do things in which, and express yourself in a way that the artificial intelligence system can't, because it's coming for everybody. It's coming for everything. People thought, as Cyprian said, people thought that creativity and the artist and music, these were going to be the last things that the artificial intelligence was going to be taken over. But now we're seeing with Chat GPT and Chat GPT 4 and all these different AI systems, it's actually the first. And what are you going to do? Are people just going to buy AI music? And if you are, it's like, bro, like, who's behind that? What soul is behind that? It's not a soul that you can appreciate. And so, like you said, buying t-shirts, it's just little things, $5 here and there. This is how I do what I do. This is the only way that I survive. And so it does make a lot. It does make a difference. People don't think that it does, but it all adds up. And if we can do that for our artists, I'm a big supporter of B-Dive and Keenan Beats.
Yep.
And, I can't tell you how many people listen to Keenan B-Dive, like just the ortho music that we did. Throw some chants, throw some beats, and then I add visuals to it. But now it's a thing. It's an experience. It's a new form to experience orthodoxy, the beauty of the church, the beauty of the aesthetics. We have to support each other. We have to constantly be thinking about creating more beautiful things and expressing the uniqueness of who we are through it.
Yep, absolutely. And when that stuff becomes more and more common, because here's a funny thing about that is there was a guy, I think this was in the late 90s. He put on a hard drive, or this is early 2000s. He tried to copyright every melody that could ever happen, right? And, that of course doesn't include timing differences, things like this, different harmonies and stuff like that. There's still, most of the songs you're going to hear is going to be what's called a 1, a 4, a 6, and then a 5. And that's just music terms where the 5, it's where it wants to resolve and it wants to go back home to the 1. Most pop songs you hear are the same exact harmonies, just in different keys, but there's still different things you can do with it. But when that stuff comes out and it gets popular, don't stream it. Don't buy it.
Right.
If you have the money, give $2 to an artist that you like. Buying their t-shirt goes, like David was saying, it goes a huge way. It's kind of like with food, right? Whole Foods didn't used to be everywhere, and they are overpriced, and owned by Amazon, but they have some good stuff. The reason they're everywhere now is because people shop there. It's the same with art. It's the same with YouTube. It's the same with everything. And real quick, I think now is it's true, Resident Sleeper.
Well, I was going to say, I just came across shout out to Resident Sleeper and his accordion music, bro.
Oh, yeah.
Fantastic stuff. I didn't know you played. I saw you over on Jim Bob's stream, and then through Rachel Wilson post your stuff. Dude, I'm a fan, big fan of Resident Sleeper. If you guys like accordion, phenomenal musician. Exactly what we're talking about. How many people think of the accordion as a musical opportunity, but dude kills it.
Yep.
Shout out to you, Resident Sleeper.
Yep, we'll be doing some jazz stuff later in the year. It'll be fun. But real quick, I think now is a good time to mention. So there's an event in Nashville happening June 2nd to June 3rd, I believe, or June 3rd to June 4th. I think the link will be in the description at some point, but it's called rebelsforcause.com. Jay's going to be speaking there. There's going to be other musicians there. I'm going to be playing there. But it's meant to be something where you can go support people and go speak to like-minded people to support creative outlets that are against all this nonsense and against this silliness, and doing that as much as possible. I know I sound like a broken record, but it makes a huge difference in our cultural zeitgeist.
Yes.
You want to be the hipster saying, I liked Resident Sleeper before he was, super famous. You want to be that person.
Right. And that's really an opportunity for all of us too, as Orthodox, to promote you or Resident Sleeper or B-Dive or Keenan Beats. Because guys, that's what that is also part of it, is like we as Orthodox Christians, and taking whatever expressionist tool that you have. For me, it's research. For Jay, it's research, but that's still art. Maybe some of his skits, or you know, it's his hot summer beats or whatever he comes up with, but it's all art. And if we then build communities and we support each other, like, we can actually have a sort of ecosystem that people that aren't Orthodox or maybe aren't even Christian now, that in a year from now, 2 years, 3 years, they can enter in and like, wow, look at what all this community does. Look how everybody supports each other, shares each other, and then promotes each other, so that we can all rise and express ourselves more and more. Art is really about expression. And because of the 20th century, it's less about expression and it's more about manipulation. And that, I would argue, has to do with the occult element that undergird a lot of the people that were part of these movements, of these avant-garde movements, challenging the status quo, challenging the heterogeneous nature of Christian societies, right? I actually came across a quote of Aldous Huxley doing some research today, where he told Timothy Leary in the early I think this was 1963, or early, maybe it was 1961. It was real early in the 60s, before the counterculture really got going. And he told him about, they were talking about magic and Eastern mysticism and LSD. Timothy Leary has recently turned on. He's getting ready to do his research program at Harvard. And Aldous Huxley told him the only thing that stops us is the Bible. And we have to undercut these people that believe in the Bible, because it's those people and it's those foundational values that are only going to stop us from revolutionizing society. And it's all here. And that's really what they started or continued, really, because it's, again, I just did a video on Gnosticism, incest, homosexuality, orgies, eating feces, all this different stuff that we would find atrocious, but is part of satanic worship. It's always been here. It's always challenged us. It's just now there's fewer and fewer and fewer of us to actually express ourselves in traditional ways. And so, it's on us. It's an opportunity, and it's something that we should really value, that we can express ourselves and create more beautiful things in the world.
Well, even on a popular music front, if you look at the areas where it's kind of normie country is popular, they're much more normal societies. Down in the South, where people love listening to just basic country that doesn't have anything weird in it, right? It's about, someone in their truck and driving down the road, and they are looking for their girlfriend and they can't find them, or they really like rolling through the hills or whatever. The cultures and the areas that really like that, Texas, Tennessee, the Appalachians, you go and you look at that culture, you can actually see that it impacts their culture. And in these things, we need to participate in them. We can't stand by and just go, oh, that's secular, I don't care. Because we living an Orthodox life, whether you're a plumber, a janitor, an electrician, you're going to do that as an Orthodox Christian. You're going to do that trying to serve God as best as you can, and so however we do that, we need to cut that dividing line down between Orthodox and secular. And I'm not saying going far and saying, oh, you don't call holy things holy. That's a different thing. The church is a holy place. You don't do secular things in the church. But our lives, we shouldn't have that dividing line, I don't think, in things we participate in.
Right. Resident Sleeper, what's going on, brother? Welcome.
Hello, God bless. Thank you for having me on. I came here to talk to my favorite math rock musician, Chase Haggard.
It's still not funny.
It's funny. It's very funny. Thank you for the shout out. I appreciate it so much.
Yeah, dude, you're killing it on the accordion, man. You're really skilled, dude. I love it.
Thank you. I had some comments to make on especially the building thing, because I'm Albanian. And right now there's a sort of push towards this idea of secular buildings, especially in the capital of Albania, which isn't a real country, but we're going to talk about it anyway. The buildings are like being torn down, the old ones in Tirana, and they're being paid, or the architects are being paid to make these monstrosities of just different shapes and colors, and it ruins the look of the whole city.
Right, and that's exactly that sort of Discordian, and the chaos, right? So again, part of my research today was looking at, I don't know if you guys are familiar with, there's a religion called Discordianism, and it's literally about people who privilege chaos. The debate is chaos creates order, or there's only chaos and order is a human imposed cultural construction. But these people, and it's prominent people throughout the 60s that you probably didn't know, were part of this sort of spiritual identity of called Discordianism. Some of them were part of what's called the Process Church, which they're accelerationists. And so they read the Bible, they're Gnostic, they read it totally backwards. And so they're trying to bring about the revelation, the end of the world, quicker and quicker and quicker. And so they do that by creating more disharmony. And aesthetics, as you're talking about buildings, this is a perfect example of it. And that, unfortunately, American cities, earlier in the 20th century, the 1800s, the 19th century, America created more like European style buildings. But now it's gone basically to the Soviet style communist buildings where everything's square, a few windows, everything's concrete, very bland looking. And it's death to your soul, really.
Yeah, that perfect symmetry definitely affects you, where you and symmetry is a beautiful thing, but when you walk around and all of your aesthetics are completely concrete, no light, no natural angles from plants or anything like that happening, or texture from stucco. I know people will spend, and Jim Bob, yeah, that's right. That's what I was intimating. I was going to call you later, Jim Bob, and see if we could get working on that together. But I've seen people talk about how when they bought a house, they added textured stucco to their house, and it completely changed how they felt in the house. Just having that small little thing. I know it seems silly, but aesthetics around you impact you on a day-to-day life. That's why having icons around is important. And Father Turbo Qualls, in one of his most recent streams on Church of the Eternal Logos, brought up how important that is, and it can't be overstated.
I have a word. I'm sorry.
It's like the smooth walls are creating smooth brains.
That's right. Which came first, the smooth walls or the smooth brain?
I have a working theory, and I think it's a good one. Now, I could be wrong here, but I think this push towards the style of architecture is just to make it easier to replicate in the popular game Minecraft.
A big Minecraft.
It's big Minecraft. That's the thing.
Yeah, that's another really interesting point of why is Minecraft so popular?
I didn't expect that to be taken seriously,
but seriously, that's one of the most popular games right now, right? I know my nieces when they were younger, they were these were girls, but they would sit there and play Minecraft all day.
Right.
Yeah.
It's because people don't build anything and do anything in their day-to-day life.
Proclivity to build, right.
I think there was
maybe the proclivity for man to want to be a creator or assume that role of creator, some sort of say in his own personal universe.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think there was a good point that was brought up that I think could be dived into a little bit further. It's how everything we interact with is, in a sense, spiritual, regardless of what it is. And I've noticed this. If you go into like the emo culture or this culture or something like that, continuing to listen to that kind of music only affects the person spiritually. They affect their mood. It affects like listening to depressing things. You're always going to be depressed.
Right.
I think that is a big component of like you have to be very careful with what you consume because all media is spiritual.
Right. And as Orthodox, we think of in energetic terms. So words are energies. I mean, words are literally phonetic sound waves that we then hear and interpret it as meaning, which is, again, a divine process in and of itself. But music is exactly that. And so what type of vibrations and energy are you taking in? Because that's going to dramatically affect the way you feel and the way you move about in the world.
And all of these things, even kind of on that note, because it's true, obviously, you don't want to listen to destructive music for your head and for your heart. But sorrow can be a godly thing. There's a godly sorrow. There's a godly indignation, right? There's righteous anger. And there can be beautiful music that makes you feel not like depressed, right? But somber. And so all of these different things, they have their place in life, and how are we going to participate in it?
Right.
I think there's a difference between the sorrow of that kind of music. Sorrow, I think it's artificial. I think it's meant to target a specific crowd and keep them within that sense of sorrow. When it's more of a weird kind of pride, a sort of, oh, I'm part of this group and we're always depressed. I think it's cliquey almost.
Like the Antisocial social club.
Right.
You know, that kind of stuff. Yeah, I wanted to bring up this story, something that happened to me, because back when I was new agey, you know, and sort of Gnostic, I had these ideas too. I just didn't, you know, my paradigm was all incoherent. But I remember mentioning to my friends, this was like 4 or 5 years ago. I remember mentioning to my friends, like, talking about secular Hispanic reggaeton music, right? Like in Puerto Rico, and like these popular artists. And I was telling them, I was like, bro, there's a formula. Like, there's a formula that they're using to manipulate, or to these sort of hooks, like these sort of melodies, you know. I don't speak, you know, the language of music too well, but I could tell that there was some sort of order, some sort of formulaic order to the songs that they were creating. And then a few years later, when my sister was in university out there, in her Spanish college class, she told me that her professor, as part of the curriculum, actually dissected, broke down some of the secular music. You guys have heard of Bad Bunny, right?
Yes.
No, yeah. I'm glad that you haven't, brother.
I don't watch cartoons.
But
that's a lie.
Yeah, yeah. So it's the Bad Bunny is a dude.
The cartoons, or he doesn't know Bad Bunny?
The cartoons.
And so anyway, in her Spanish class, they dissected one of his songs and determined that it was grammatically, phonetically, like linguistically perfect, or in other words, like just intentionally created, you know, in that order, as a sort of formulaic structure in the music to, like you're saying, promote a sort of paradigm.
Well, it's math. Music it's a logic of sound, you know, and it's a logic of communication through sound. So it's mathematics through time, right? So it's inherently mathematical. There's inherently order to it. And when people do atonal things or things like this, they're still appealing to the order to say, oh, I'm not using that. Just like if I were to say, oh, you told me a rule, I'm not going to follow that rule. I'm still going, yeah, well, right there's the rule. So any music is going to have that order to it. And it's basically, there's certain things that happen to your brain and to your body where you start, just like if I say 4 times 4 right now, you'll start thinking about what is 4 times 4, right? 4 times 6, 4 times 10. When I start, if I started playing something like da ba da 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 da, you're gonna start hearing and thinking about how that's gonna resolve itself, and you start thinking with that. It's just like when you're watching a movie, you're in the movie, right? You're focused in the movie. Your energies are in that story. That's what's happening, and so it's kind of a trance state that people can get into when they listen to certain musics. And that's the point. It's supposed to occupy your conscious mind. And then underneath the stuff that you're not really listening to, whether it be, you first start hearing the drum beat or the melody, then you use the lyrics to try to slip past your conscious mind and slip something through, into your noose and into your heart that you're not quite focused on, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. That depends on how you use it. But it's not just about one style of music or another style of music. That's just how it is. That's how it works.
Right. Yeah. And that reminds me of what Father Turbo was talking about last time he was on, is that, the role of attention, and attention is worship. And so what we place our attention on, and even when we don't know that it's part of our attention, that's sort of the subtleties of lyrics within the music that we listen to, and how that kind of gets in our heads. And we may be repeating things or thinking about things we don't realize. And so, again, creating things that people can give their attention to, that allows a sort of, not liturgical worship, but at least a sort of reverential point in which it moves back to something of pure harmony, pure order, something good, something that people can appreciate it, something that they can actually sort of let go. Because when you, again, the people are letting go inside the culture that we are, and that's partly why we see the dysfunction in people and the rise in mental illness, the rise in suicide rates, the rise in drug addiction. It's all part of the disharmony expressing itself out through individuals.
Yeah. You know, it's been a big thing that you can see in the cultures, is there's one thing that has become so like enveloped in the culture, and people started to take notice of it pretty recently. It's called the lick, within music, and it's a set of notes that goes da 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 da. It's really funny because it's become so part of the culture that the even for like Disney, for example, the entirety of the Pirates to the Caribbean soundtrack is just the lick. And I don't think anybody like notices these things like gematria, but for music. But no, but
do you see it everywhere, Resident?
I see it every. I can't sleep.
Mesmerized.
Is the lick in the room with us right now?
Yeah, is it in the
room? He's under your bed.
But yeah, that's something that I've started to notice, and people have started to make a big meme out of. So like, I listen to jazz radio because I'm old, and I hear it so often within the solos that people play. It's just not just jazz, but classical. You can find it in literally anything, especially pop culture.
Well, yeah, and bringing that up, it ties back to the mimetic nature of music itself, where in the music community, like me and Resident Sleeper, we've both seen 1,000 memes about the lick, and any musician who's messing around on social media will have seen these memes and they know it. And these motifs, they're just, they're things that catch your attention. And then if you're not paying quite a lot of attention to the rest of the things going on, other like words, lyrics, other ideas can be slipped in underneath that you don't even realize are there, that can, if you water them properly, they can lead to whatever fruit that's going to come, whether it's good or bad.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to add, sometimes it's not even about the artist's music themselves. Like, for example, Bad Bunny, obviously, like, his music, it just sounds like a really nervous Puerto Rican guy trying to, like, mumble rap or something. And then it's his social media presence then gets a bunch of these young kids, like, wrapped in it. And then it's like, oh, what's Bad Bunny doing now? He's dressing flamboyantly like this, or he's dating this celebrity. And then it's also the image that they portray, that they kind of hook people in with the music that they do. Then the media amplifies it, and then they use their lifestyle or like what they're wearing to sort of slip in a message that way as well.
Right. Yeah, and the fact that people are concerned with the neoteny and the monotony of who the hell cares what Bad Bunny's doing or who he's dating, or this is part of the infantilization of people's minds in our culture, like the celebrity worship.
Well, yeah, one of his videos, one of the intros, he's portrayed as a little kid watching his music video through the TV, his younger self when he's like 11, 13, and it's very neotenized. He has like a fuzzy backpack, the setting is like a child's play, like kind of messy, sort of colorful room. And it's very obvious, even before, I think, to me, before I was an Orthodox, before I came into the Orthodox faith, I was still aware of these things, but ultimately, again, it was relativistic, so I didn't have a way of saying this is not okay. You know what I'm saying? Now I have solid ground from which I can point and say, hey, this is definitely not the way it is. Because someone hit me with that once. Someone hit me, well, I was arguing against the Transformers, and I just said something like, well, it's not natural, and then they kind of made a meta argument and said, well, the Transformer would just be nature doing its thing as well, so
right.
So it's to that point, I wanted to ask you guys what you thought of this dilemma that I have with my mom, this sort of friction because she's a yoga instructor. But also,
You can just find a new mom, dude.
Whatever she does, make sure she doesn't promote men's yoga pants.
Excuse
get a
me.
new mom, bro.
Have you read my name, Yoga Pants Apologist? No.
Yes, you need to go to confession and apologize.
Yeah. Well, if you pay $5 a month, you can see Resident Sleeper doing his downward dog in his yoga pants.
Yeah.
The payment is indulgence to the Church of Liberals.
But yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I don't know, your guys' opinions, but I mean,
so
that's a good question for a priest.
Things, can you participate in yoga and these sort of yoga style stretches and exercises without sort of, I don't know, invoking or interacting with the theology or the paradigm from which it emerged
from? A lot of the stretches are just stretches, and then other ones are like weird movements and stuff. Right. I haven't studied it that deep, but a lot of them are just basic stretches. But you don't need to go, oh, I'm doing Vipassana, and stuff like that.
Just tell her to call it a stretching class.
Right. Well, that's where I've talked with people about gymnastics. So the way that Western people typically engage in those practices is through gymnastics. So, the stretching, muscle building. But like you said, there's basically fitness yoga, and then there's hatha yoga, there's hot yoga, there's kundalini yoga. There's different forms of how you approach the yoga. That can definitely change it. I mean, if you're doing yoga and there's a statue of Shiva and everybody's saying namaste and like you have to chant Om, there's probably a problem there. That's not exactly a Christian worldview. Is yoga good for you? Stretching and getting blood flow in your mouth? Yeah, that's good. I've recommended people maybe looking more into gymnastics and stuff like that. But there are different times. I'm not sure where that fine line is in regards to Resident Sleeper doing his sun salutation with nothing on but his yoga pants and his downward dog and his warrior pose. I'm not sure. But that would be, like Chase said, that'd be something to talk to your spiritual father about.
$5.99 a year, by the way. No.
It seems like Jim Bob's really got some beef with you, Chase. He says, does Chase care to address the gypsy jazz is designed to turn Orthodox Christians into atheistic traveling petty thieves?
I'm not here to go on trial. Okay, we can talk about that later. I'll be coming out with a official statement in the next week or two. You can talk to my press secretary about that, Jim Bob. Next.
I'll answer it.
That man's in a suit. I believe him.
I'm going to give a special shout out to Simon the Amputee. God bless you, brother. Looking forward to see you again in Montana. Throws in $9.99, no comment. Thank you so much, Simon the Amputee. Go ahead. Anybody wanted to hop in? I don't mean to disrupt.
Yeah, it's just a quick point about the whole yoga thing. It really is kind of convoluted because obviously, you're trying to do some different stretches, but then, there's certain positions, stuff like that, where it's like the downward dog or whatever it is. But sometimes you're just like, oh, I just want to like stretch my legs or something. And then you're like, oh, am I accidentally doing this pose or whatever? And then I think it's just one of those annoying things where it's like, you kind of have to research it a little bit just to like be sure, or just, like you said, with the gymnastics, but also like body weight stuff. I try to do that. So I don't know.
I don't
right. And for me, the way I incorporate my flexibility is I do it through martial arts. So as a man, it's like I can do bodybuilding. And then I want to get more flexible in all different ways. Well, that's kind of what martial arts is useful for as well. But Dr. Vagisil, I want to highlight, you threw in a couple super chats here. So thank you so much, bro. You sent in a $2 super chat that said, building architecture needs to be changed from the brutalist nonsense to more contemporary styles, which come from God-oriented mindsets. Look at the kids menu art you see on leftist corporate advertisements. It's so childish and no defined facial features. And I would say it's not even now child's art. You look at the metaverse, you look at any of the sort of Silicon Valley art, it's always like incredibly abstract, very, very cartoonish, very unrealistic. Well, I'm not going to get into anything too controversial, but it certainly doesn't have the aesthetics you would hope for. And it's not just, it's like all art is becoming more and more childish.
I think
Yeah,
I think you don't have you shouldn't look at it as overly legalistic. Like, hey, if I go touch my toes, am I doing a demonic yoga pose? I think that's
if you're
overthinking it.
presupposing Albanian,
Right.
Yeah,
you
well,
know,
that's why
answer.
he's the yoga pan apologist.
Yeah.
this is why we don't trust Albanians.
I don't trust them either, man.
We had another super chat thrown in by Adam_1912 throws in a very generous super chat of $50 and says, I needed to hear this. I'm in a band and this has been on my mind when writing. Much appreciated, fellas. God bless. Well, thank you so much, Adam_1912. God bless you, brother, and keep up the great work.
Yeah,
thank
Adam,
you.
hit me up on Instagram. We can chat sometime. You know, I've been in indie rock bands, indie rock jam bands, band leader there, and you know, having to deal with the politics of another bandmate not being a Christian, me saying no, we can't play this song, you know, and having to deal with that. So if you want someone to chat with, hit me up on Instagram at Chase Haggard Music, and we can chat, and hopefully you'll keep making music. And you never know, you know, it can have a good message. Obviously you're going to make good music. It's not going to be, I lift my hands up, Lord, and you lift me up. It's not going to be some silly stuff like that, but keep fighting, man. Keep doing it.
The real question that's on my mind, Chase, is did you or did you not go to band camp?
No, I did not.
Okay.
I did not. No.
Dr. Vagisil throws in another $2, and he said, when you said men's yoga pants, I had to pour holy water into my ears. The poison of secular music is it always leads to nihilism because it gets you to focus on emotional highs and stimulation, which effeminizes men's thinking and impulse control. True.
Good one.
Yeah, it's just you know, a lot of this, you know, people, especially now where they're going to these EDM concerts where it's like bump, 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 like it's all about the beat, and then they're just like, oh yeah, do some bad stuff to yourself, and then you're like, wait, what? What did you just say? It's like you they keep sliding in all this stuff, and then again, it's just like the beat. Well, it's also like, you know, the certain kinds of rap that they glorify a certain lifestyle, and then that gets promoted as the quote unquote culture, and then it becomes popular to listen to. And then, like you said, like over time, you listen to that certain kind of music, you hang around certain kinds of people, and then it develops your mindset, your character, whether you realize it or not. And then it just, I don't know, it's slippery slope.
Well, on that note, it's interesting because, you know, obviously any style of music can have distortions and nasty stuff slipped into it, but someone going to the gym and listening to some repetitive EDM music that's just instrumental, and they're just focusing on working out, you know, while they hear and they're just working out, and they're using that to help them get into that mind state, not in some strange transcendental way, but just as a tool. I mean, that's not negative. That's not negative in any way, but I get what you're saying. I mean, that's any music can be used for evil. It is a weapon.
Right. I was going to bring that up too, because I agree with both of you guys, Dr. Vagisil and Chase, because when I bodybuild, I listen to, you know, it's like metal EDM Verge type music, and it just gives me the energy. But that's really the only time I listen to that music, because it's about the mind state and the monotony of, you know, hitting sets, hitting reps. But at the same time,
it's to squat 405, right? DPH.
Yeah, exactly. You got some to get you, give you a pep. And so I do that. I know people always ask me, hey, do you listen to Orthodox chants when you work out? That's what I've been doing. And God bless you if you do. I'm a work in progress. Okay. So don't do what I do, but I still listen to, like, that's about the time I indulge in my EDM, like dubstep, metal EDM type music, is a few playlists when I'm working out.
I got a good playlist for you, DPH.
Send it, bro.
Muscular Martyr Gin hymns. Just say no.
Send it, bro.
Well, it's interesting if you.
The key is to play the Orthodox chants at 1.5 speed, so it sounds like they're.
There you go. Major go ahead. I was going to say major thank you to Willie Jenkins, throws in $5 channel member. Thank you so much. Willie Jenkins says t-shirt fundraiser. Well, thank you so much. I always need more money for t-shirts. I do appreciate. Thank you so much, Willie Jenkins, and thanks for being a member, brother.
I was going to say that if something interesting that you can see in your own life, it's not that deep. It's not that some revolutionary thought. This is pretty basic, but if you listen to music in the morning, notice over a week, instead of listening to something fast and something that has a bunch of lyrics, put on simple music. You can even do, what's it called? There's a group called like the Midnight String Quartet, and they just have a bunch of pop songs that are arranged into classical quartet pieces that are very soft and very simple. Listen to that just in the morning. Don't listen to something with lyrics. Don't listen to something super fast. Right. Notice how different your mood is throughout the rest of the day. And this isn't some magical thing that you can't overcome, but it's a way that our being gets impacted day to day by music that, you know, if you're not paying attention to it, it's going to subtly impact you.
Right. It's true. It's true.
Good, because I'm coming from that sort of from that paradigm. You know, I've been listening to like music on a festival, you know, some nerd in this festival, EDM, you know, techno culture. I've been a dancer for 5 years. You know, I shuffled. I was like in the scene.
Chippendale?
What's that?
Chippendale?
Nah. I was in Vegas once. This late, you know, I was fucking dancing, and this girl was like, "You should be a stripper," and I was like, you know, back then I was like, "Yeah," that was like the best compliment, you know, back in the day. But fucking, it's been tough navigating this because I also paint, and I'm an artist. And most of my art was like sort of visionary, psychedelic-y, you know, very abstract, but like surreal. I used to call it like metaphysical surrealism, whatever that meant. You know what I'm saying? But it was like this sort of realism, but with a sort of, you know, esoteric, you know, psychedelic vibe. And
well, you know, you could try, and it's different for everybody. Obviously, art is something that's very intimate for people that are doing something that's overtly quote unquote artistic. Something maybe you could try if you wanted to is go read through Proverbs or Psalms or Ecclesiastes, find something that resonates with you, and then just write down what that verse is. Think about that, and then think about how you can put that in your art as just a practice, just to say, okay, I'm focusing on this. Right. And just as an exercise, and it can start reorienting what you're pointed at and what you're oriented to when you paint, when you do something. And
right.
And then that can lead to, you know, something that's more effective, but just as a first step.
Right. I wanted to bring in AC here. He's kind of been quiet, brother. You got any you want to break us down with some wisdom? What you got anything to say on the topic today? Thanks for hopping in, by the way.
So, you know, you were talking about how we need this stuff outside of the church. We need some certain stuff in its right place in the secular world.
Right.
And one of the places I've seen people are doing some work and really reaching a lot of people is around like fantasy and stuff, and the work Pajot is doing. And he's
with the Beowulf and
he's careful too to say, you know, that Origin was a heretic and there's a certain proper way to use him.
Definitely
and
was.
Belongs outside and below the church, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it seems like a lot of people, and I'm sympathetic to this, even though I don't feel like I really need the fantasy that much anymore. And I'm a little bit older, and I don't care, and I don't need a way into orthodoxy at this point. But it seems like I think sometimes that fantasy and stuff kind of brings its way into the spiritualism.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that a great point would be like Tolkien and C.S. Lewis. You know, Lord of the Rings is an epic fantasy novel, and yet at the same time is filled with Christian themes, at the same time appealing to secular people that are into magic and wizards and hobbits and all this different stuff. So I think you're right on. And that for people with that skill set, that's another opportunity. You know, we didn't even talk about authors. We didn't talk about people who write books or short stories. that's another opportunity to sort of get people to move through mentally worlds, which then are embedded with your value system, which is a very, again, a very subtle way to influence people. And that's why we've seen pop culture try to transform Lord of the Rings and imbue it with the actual opposite and take away much of what he's trying to highlight and promote.
Yeah, and things don't have to be overtly in some kind of Christian sense, you know. When people, when I start putting out some old original tunes of mine towards the end of the year, people are going to listen to it and they're just going to think it's indie rock. And then people that know me are going to go, oh, this is Christian. But then people that just listen to it will just go, oh, that's nice. You know, they're not going to know. And it's the same with fantasy, where it can be just a positive pointing to something that's used to be a little chip in the wall of the worldview that someone's built up, that over time God uses to break down fully, you know. And it can be something more subtle, like Lord of the Rings, where a lot of people, when you tell them that, oh, Tolkien was a very devout Roman Catholic, he was a Christian, they won't believe you at first, and they won't even have noticed. Or it can be as overt as the Screw Tape Letters, which is my favorite C.S. Lewis book, which is incredible.
Yeah.
Everyone should read that book, but it doesn't have to be overt. It can be subtle.
Right.
Now, one other question on this, and I'll let everybody else talk.
No, feel free, bro. No, dude, you're here. Don't feel like you have to leave.
Well, do you think there needs to be a preparation too for people coming in? Because I kind of came in more from that Peterson side of things with Pageau and stuff. All this Jung and archetypal stuff with people who want to bring in like Jungian ideas and more mythical ideas, kind of what you saw at the Renaissance when they had this breaking point.
Right.
All this stuff kind of subverted the religion. Right. I mean, if people are going to criticize this side of the internet for having like young men coming in being rude and stuff, I mean, like every group is going to have its problems.
Right.
We all come to the church with problems. I do think, because I like what they're doing, bringing people in through this stuff. It's important, but I think there is a whole set of issues there that might not even be coming necessarily from somebody like Pageau. But like, I've had people yell at me knowing about Jung when I said, hey, this guy was talking about putting Lucifer into the Trinity. They're like, no, he never said that. We should be able to.
Well, I think that's catechesis, and that's something that it happens over time. And I think everyone has to be careful. There's baggage we all are going to bring into, if we're converting to Orthodox Christianity, we're going to bring baggage in, and then we just have to have the will and the humility to go, oh, I was wrong. I submit to the church. I was wrong. Okay.
In my experience and my time talking to people who are coming in from mostly Protestant backgrounds, but sometimes atheist backgrounds, they like to bring in some very interesting ideas. I'll give you one that was insane, that they thought ancient Egypt was a communist utopia. I don't know how they got to that conclusion, but realistically, I think the best course of action is to very gently try and let them down, or just very gently, let them know, hey, this is not entirely correct. Try and, poke holes in it, or alternatively, pray for them.
Yeah. Right. Maybe they just love carrying sandstone across sand and then stacking it 2,000 pounds on top of each other.
Yeah, I never heard that one before. That's a good one.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that but I do want to welcome our buddy Jim Bob. Welcome.
Hey, what's up? Hey, you guys hear me okay?
We can hear you great, man.
I'm not answering any of those questions.
Oh yeah, no, I figured. No, yeah, it's definitely some sus. It's sus, as the kids say.
Yeah, I didn't make a ring with a food item on it.
Oh yeah. Let's do a full round one with pepperoni. Yeah, it's funny, the art stuff, and like for me, that was actually one of my concerns coming into Orthodoxy, is that am I going to lose my edge? Am I going to lose like the sharpness and the wit and some of the brutality? And then where do I take the content itself? Like whether it's the cartoons or jingles or whatever, skits and stuff. And I think that concern was I think it's a valid concern, but as long as you're willing to like explore it, how to answer it. But I'm finding that it's not as hard as an answer as I thought it would be. You know what I mean? Right. Like you don't suddenly just become this like sort of like purist monk. You know, my art is now silent. Like I'll write a song that's just pure silence now, like a Sevilla, right? That was my fear. So.
Well, it takes a while to ascend to Sevilla's level of spirituality.
Right.
But you know what's interesting is there's monks that are super goofy.
Sevilla.
You know, there's monks that are super goofy. There's monks that are, you know, much more quiet.
I was gonna say, have you guys ever seen Brother Nathaniel?
I was gonna say that.
I love him. He's so funny.
He comes in like fire.
Yep, exactly. And the cool thing that you already know this, but for people that maybe don't, is Orthodox Christianity is the antithesis to the modern day Gnostic perennialists, where they're about depersonalization. No, we're about true personalization of who God created us to be, that we become more and more as we participate with him. So I think that, yeah, we all go, I mean, we're never going to stop going through growing pains, but there's going to hit a point, I think, where yourself and other people, and I'm still going through it too, I'm going to go through it for the rest of my life, where we'll say, oh, you know, this art or this thing that I do, as long as it's not, you know, sinful, it's been kind of baptized and it's been oriented towards God and given up to God and used for him. You know, your cards.
Regarding what Jim Bob said, I'd be curious, you know, losing your edge. I mean, in regards to the culture, I think Orthodoxy kind of provides a continual edge to kind of cut against culture with, because you have a strict now worldview and value set that you can constantly be bouncing off against the world, where, you know, I'd be curious, like what would be the hardest edge you could have outside of being like the most traditional form of Christian you could be?
Yeah, that's true. It's like it's the counter edge. So it's like, you know, that edge was already there. Like I was already doing counterculture stuff. It just wasn't rooted in anything ultimately true. It was kind of my own opinion that pointed to a truth. But when you have the foundation, you just have like, you basically have the sword that you need. So yeah, you're right. Like, especially now in modernity and all the secular naturalist dominant view, at least in the West or whatever, is there's no better tool than pairing orthodoxy with your creative skills. Now the line is weird, right? You know, like not weird, like it's hard to know how much to take it literal. Like, you know, like Chase was saying, suddenly you're, you know, doing such on the nose prayer songs or something like that. And then it's like, so that seems to be the thing where, you know, in general, that's a process to figure out, like how, whereas if you're an iconographer or a sculptor or an architect, you're kind of guided already. You're just actually sort of like a conduit. You already have the answer. Whereas if you get into more pop stuff, cultural stuff, song, you know, it's not so clear as to what what your expression is going to be, and then how much you actually explicitly align it with orthodoxy. Something I'm thinking about is like, if someone likes something, I find it even more appealing if they're like, where does that all come from? And then you realize it's not me. It's like, that's like so relieving as an artist to go, oh, the source isn't actually me. I thought I was the artist and I'm the source. And I want people to ask me, how did you come up with that, Jim Bob? Like this kind of pride stroking stuff. And there's something very relieving about just going, oh, it's this other thing. It's over here. You're just going to nudge them that way.
Historically, artists were always talking about their muse, which is, in a pagan context, then whoever inspires you is like your sort of spiritual muse, which really could be anything. Very ambivalent as to what that is. But as Christians, you know, we believe in a particular source for the energy of creativity itself. And conversations I've had with clergy is, you know, those that aren't totally leftist subversives within the church, they appreciate having a hard edge. In a way, us doing online stuff, again, this is a private conversation I've had with clergy, we are the cultural edge of orthodoxy. And so entering into the culture, mocking it, memeing against it, making, direct criticisms, maybe being very blunt and even being a meanie like Jay Dyer.
Oh gosh.
Okay, well, this is actually useful for the church because I'm not clergy. I'm not trying to be clergy. I'm trying to be an Orthodox Christian. If I cross the line too much, okay, that's what my spiritual father's for, to say, okay, you pull back a little bit. But if it's all in the intent for me to spread what I believe to be true, and I'm just trying to be the best man I can, but also then hit hard against culture.
It's also I mean, I know there's outreach and stuff, but in a way, in this online sphere, in this creative sphere that's just all entangled, people online represent sort of like the boundary between the church, well-established fabric, and like the fringe. So in a way, the fringe is like the outreach. And I know Jonathan Peugeot has talked about this before a couple of years ago, how the fringe has its necessity in any given paradigm. And this one, I could see it. I actually go to church and I'll get some, because they know that I know other online people like Jay, and they're sort of like hesitant. Again, I go to OCA, so our prostrations are actually downward dog into forward lunge. So forgiveness, the forgiveness vespers were really intense, a lot of sweating. But it's there. It's palpable. There's like, there's just like fellowship. It's like, there's this like, online stuff. It's like this fear of like, and I understand it. Like, you try to be, you want church, you want the church and the tradition to be beyond political. I don't even think apolitical is even the right term, like transcends politics. And I understand that, but I also don't think you can escape the connection to culture and politics and entertainment, which to me has never been fused, right? And so indiscernible in any era of time. Like now, entertainment, politics, and culture are just this, like, it's you're like trying to like pull strings out of a ball and figure out which one you're actually operating in.
Right. And go ahead. I don't mean to cut anybody off. Somebody was saying something.
Forgive me. You can go ahead.
Go ahead, brother. Go ahead.
I was going to just say, because I hear this term and I've heard it more often, is like internet orthodoxy.
Yep.
And I feel I can't stand that term, because it's like casting a stone. It's like passing a judgment already on somebody else. You don't know what their spiritual life is. Maybe they have concern for you. And I've seen it all too many times. I can't stand it.
Is that synonymous with ortho, bro? Because that's always, I talked about that today. How it's like the general sense of bro is like pejorative, sort of douchey.
That's what people use it as,
short. Always, not jorts, not cut jorts, but actual khaki.
It's yoga.
Yeah, people will always
polo shirt and khakis.
People will use those terms as
belonging to a frat.
Hey,
Chase, you're coming in a little quiet.
Oh, am I?
Compared to Jim Bob, he's at least on my end.
Sorry, I'm just yelling over everybody.
Yeah, I think Jim Bob's just loud.
Just yelling.
I was gonna say that I think that people will use that term, and it's so dumb, because there's no such thing as internet orthodoxy. There's no such thing. There's Orthodox people who are using the internet. Orthodoxy, the person actually using that is actually being denigrating towards the church, because the church is a lived experience. It's not an internet phenomena. And it really does bug me, when you have dumb people like Ben Cabe Theoria, who's complete loser.
He's a genius, man. What do you know?
literally told me heretical things about how he would say that technically people that leave the church for Roman Catholicism are apostates, but losers like that who attack Jay and Father and Nice for no reason except for they're irrelevant. They'll use those terms to try to piety signal. And the thing is, being on the fringe and being online and being a part of art and in the world, this is how you actually bring people to the church and are used by God to bring people to the church. So the people that do that, they're not helping anyone join the church, and they can be annoyed that someone has an edge or something. We can bring that up to our spiritual father, like David brought up. We can go and confess when we slip up, but we're in the world. We're not of it. We're engaged in the world. And that's what art, online activity is doing through, Patrick's streams, through your memes, Jim Bob, and of course your channel. but this is you engaging in the culture. And even if it's not explicitly Orthodox, someone's going to go, oh, he had this cool take about naturalism that he put into a meme. What's this guy believe? Let me check out his YouTube channel. Oh, what's this Christianity thing? What's orthodoxy? They could go down a rabbit hole. You never know.
And everybody I've interacted of the like clergy, I know a lot of clergy, everybody who's like, oh, like Resident Sleeper saying, or internet Orthodox or the Ortho Bro, which I hate the Ortho Bro thing. I personally hate Orthodox Twitter. So most of you guys are faggots, but but anyways, all the clergy I've talked to, they appreciate it because again, they can't say things that we could say. Maybe we can step over a boundary more frequently that they can't say, but that's now, you see, we function like Jimbo was talking about the fringe. We have a role within the church that clergy can't participate in. They're busy doing things that we can't do and shouldn't be doing. I'm not spiritually ready for that. But at the same time, engaging with people, you know, putting our values into the world, we can cross lines and barriers that other people can't. And this is a way we can defend our faith. We know what does it mean to be a warrior for the faith?
I think a lot of the change that comes into Orthodoxy, it has to start with the lay people. You can't go from top down. I think you have to go from bottom up. If you see an issue, it has to be pointed out. It has to be attacked, not attacked, but like lovingly, you know, you have to say, hey, this is wrong. The idea, but the issue, you have to try and show people, hey, this isn't what we believe, or this is wrong. It has to start with the lay people.
Well, and those things that Resident Sleeper is bringing up when he talks about change, he's talking about politics in the church and nonsense coming in through subversives trying to go against what the church always taught.
Right.
And so that change of calling that out does come from the laity. In the iconoclasm crisis, guess who was instrumental? The laity in saving icons. It was the laity.
The Council of Florence. The bishops wanted to reunify with freaking the Pope, and when they came back to these, the lady said, "Hell no, you're out of the church. You're not allowed to be here. Get out."
Yep, exactly.
And that's why then the Eastern Orthodox never unified with Rome.
Is there? I have a historical question. Like you're saying, like it's silly to be like internet orthodoxy, which is equivalent at some other period of time, like printing press orthodox.
Exactly.
Like, oh, I hate now. But the question is, you know, isolating technologies and how they catalyze or disrupt tradition. They could be used either or, right? So in history, is there a time when there was an equivalent to what parts of the church might see as a threat of internet orthodoxy, where it's like sort of outside tradition, it's foreign, it's too new, it's modern, it's Wild West, maybe? I'm trying to steelman their position, basically.
Well, Arianism, Nestorianism was passed on orally through different people, right? These ideas were passed on from Arius and other people to other people just verbally. And so, yeah, there wasn't the internet. So now things spread quicker. So there's even more of a need for lay people to go, hey, you know, you're saying that an apostate priest is more in the church than Father Deacon Dr. Ananias and Jay Dyer? Ben Cave, you're saying that?
Right.
No, we need to smack that down, or the stuff that, you know, issues going on with the OCA, which is a canonical church. And, you know, there's great parishes too. But historically, I think any crisis, it's spread verbally and through writing shared. It's the same thing.
There's a more recent example that I would probably use, and I say more recent, but if you look at the Russian history too, like the history of Orthodoxy within Russia, you can see, for example, what were called the Old Believers, and how there had to be a correction done because they were doing things improperly. They were doing the liturgy improperly. They had a few words taken out of parts of the liturgy. That one I think is a lot more recent. You had who was the bishop at the time? I can't remember off the top of my head, but he went to the Byzantine Empire. There was a council being held, and he was like, "Wait a minute, we've been doing things wrong." And then there was a pushback from those lay people in a sort of opposite direction, saying, no, we're right, rather than understanding what they were doing was incorrect. I think that's a more recent example.
Right. I think. Well, and with the internet, like Chase was saying, the lag time between a causation is so much shorter than ever any time in history. And so I think in the opposite direction, without the internet, evil wouldn't be able to spread like it is. And so there's a necessity for us to be on the internet, engage in internet culture, because this is the medium, whether it be the printing press, whether it be oral communication. This is the way communication is spread now. There's an obligation for us to be on it. And multiple patriarchs. That's why Father Turbo, the reason he got on and started doing a podcast is because the patriarch of the Serbian Orthodox Church created an Instagram account. He said, if this is where the people are, then we need to be where their people are, because that's how we spread the faith. And so this idea that it's a threat to orthodoxy or internet, the only threat is if we're pushing heresy. And that's why these people, when you ask them, well, what did I say was wrong? I've had criticism from people. What did I say is wrong? What did I say that's wrong? Well, they don't have anything that I said that's wrong. They don't like the way I said it. They don't like that I said, hey, you guys are acting like little bitches or something. I could probably change my language, but again, I'm not clergy, and I'm trying to cater and straddle this line between being in the faith and really hitting hard in regards to talking about the culture, because look what's going on. Yeah. I mean, literally 6 people just were killed at a Christian church because Christians didn't promote, certain agendas, the culture. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you bring that up, because certain people that have been attacking, Jay and Father Ananias and all of patristic faith, which patristic faith, for the person who hates everyone involved, that includes Father Spirit and Bailey. So you hate Father Spirit and Bailey, which I don't know how you could.
Right.
But when I asked them directly, what's wrong? Can you name one thing that they've said is wrong? They go, no, it's like, it's pastorally, it's wrong. And I go, they're not pastors. They're not priests. They're not giving pastoral advice. So what thing have they done that's wrong? And they go, well, their followers are trying to push a reform. And I go, what reform? Can you name one thing? Never. They never can. And so these people that do that push that narrative, look at the rest of the stuff that they're doing, and you'll see where they sit at. And they'll call us who are trying to engage through art in the world in a positive way. They'll call us whatever they want to call us.
I was going to say something around the lines of that too, is you can see a lot of this being pushed by not only the culture, but the media that is being consumed within people, or within the communities. You can see more of a push towards this ecumenist ideas that are being, you can see them in the news, or you're like, oh, look at all these people, why are they so hateful? Rather than reading the church fathers, reading this, reading that, you're consuming this media, you're putting these strange ideas that the church has never taught in your own head.
I think a lot of where their vitriol towards the I don't know if you want to call it the online movement, but if you look at it from their perspective, before a lot of this emerged, they were making a lot of progress in liberalizing the church, and now all of a sudden there's this contrary signal, and they don't have control over it. They, I think that's a lot of where they're mad about it. It's like they were so close, but they're starting to see their plans get derailed.
I think you're right. I think you're right on. I'll just say something real quick, is that's been a thing, is that there's been inside clergy people that were more subversive since 2019. The church, the momentum of the Orthodox Church has been going in the opposite direction compared to the way some of the people were wanting. It's not conforming to the world, because the reason why young men and women are coming to the church is for the exact opposite reason why certain bishops and priests wanted to become more like the world.
David, I have a question about that. Like, we can probably assign and actually find clear intent of that kind of that reversal of trying to customize the church to fit the world. And there's clear intention from some people to do that. But then the question is, like, let's say there's low participation. Would the outcome be the same if people try to like, with the intention of gaining more people into the church, they start to bend stuff as it's not like, let's undermine the church, but let's just make it more open to people. And it says the same, it's the same threat, right? I'm not saying that they're not the same. It's just that I wonder what the split would be of, like, basically infiltration with the intent to subvert, invert, versus like just trying to do pragmatic surface level outreach of like, no, come under this umbrella, we'll figure it out. It's all the same kind of, but also it is. How much do you guys see from the culture and things you're seeing are deliberate infiltration versus like this kind of lazy outreach approach that has a terrible consequence?
It's a great question. If you asked the people that we would maybe consider more subversive, they would say exactly what you said in the second half. Well, we're just trying to make it more open so more people will come in. But the exact opposite is the case. Like I just had Father John Whiteford come on yesterday. The people that are coming in the church are pretty hardcore. It's not that they're coming into the church like, you know what? I think I'm going to become Orthodox. It seems like they have a cool liturgy. No, these people have already read things. They've already looked into things. They're like, no, guys, this is the last refuge. You guys have a patriarchy? Great. You guys aren't for Skittles and all the transgenders? Great. You guys are still in opposition to it? Awesome. I can come in here. And then all of us are in a way defending. So like once you get under the umbrella, we're criticizing culture and we're criticizing and we're kind of the attack dogs, if you will. But I would say a lot of the people wouldn't say the first half. They wouldn't say, oh, I'm trying to liberalize it or make it more like the world. They would say it in some sort of wormy, warm-hearted way. Well, we're just trying to be more open. And, grandma down the street who's Protestant might want to become Orthodox. And you guys would just have the wrong tone.
David, isn't the irony, at least that I found locally or just generally speaking where I am, is that it's actually a lot of like cradle people who are kind of more like nonchalant, which is kind of weird, which is, the cradle we know, that I know, Posh is not that, obviously. Right. He's as Chase said, he's a Krallian. He's a secret Krallian, but isn't it interesting? It kind of makes sense once you kind of analyze it that like a cradle in the West, at least, is just more lax because it's just the way things are. And there's no real, whereas someone like me who's got that, like, what is it called? Convert zeal, who's just like, we focus, narrow road, like, there's a lot of weight, right? And then they're like, well, just let the rainbow backpack in. It's just a rainbow backpack, right? But then I'm like, no, but aren't you born into this? Like, this is, and they're like, yeah. But it's just interesting how that becomes the lazy part, and then the convert is the non-lazy part, who's maybe overzealous even sometimes. But
there's a fine line, I think, between having knowledge of what the faith is that certain cradle Orthodox don't have, and we're not saying that they're any less Orthodox, not saying anything about their their holiness or anything like that. It's a situation. They're born into the faith. Thank God, because my kids, when I have kids, are going to be born into the faith.
But their dad's going to be a badass and say, no, you're not going to associate with those people. We're not going to do that stuff. That's not what we believe.
Yep.
I'm a cradle.
Exactly. And just last thing I was going to say.
Well, that's why you're soft and promoting yoga pants.
Yeah,
you're right. Mine was
exactly. But the thing is with these people is that it's what happens a lot is people go, well, I just, I think that being Christian is about just being really like peaceful and kind and nice, and it's about being nice. And these people don't understand that we need to actually fight battles, and that passive attitude to subversion, it doesn't lead anywhere good.
No.
And the gates of hell won't prevail against the church, but you can have jurisdictions fall. You can have jurisdictions become schismatic because of their actions. You can have that. You don't want that to happen to these people and to these churches. So it's a godly thing to be righteously angry at subversion happening. And we have to internally navigate that with the people who just go, well, like, no, like my grandparents grew up in this church. It's going to be fine. Why are you worried?
Right. The same thing in my church. The people that are the most liberal are all the people that were born into it. And the people that are so many young men, we have probably like 7 young men that are now in the church. They've all had to jump through. How many people know about Orthodoxy in America? How many people even know what we believe or why we're different, or aren't they Catholics that follow the Pope? No. So it's like everybody who's entering the church has done research, and the cradles, they are the softest, because Orthodoxy is just their culture, because Orthodoxy is a lifestyle. It's not just a belief system. So for them, it's like, well, I go to Pascha and Christmas, and I get my egg cracked, and we hang out, and I do the Lent. Yeah, Grandma makes great Lenten food. But they kind of emerge and submerge themselves into American culture, where we're like fleeing American culture. We're trying to get the hell out of American culture, and so we do bring more zeal. But again, according to the clergy that I've spoke to, they love it because it gives Orthodoxy a defined edge that defines us compared to the other churches. I mean, you look at, what does Catholicism have? Trad Catholics.
I was gonna say the way that we have it set up too, especially with us promoting it online. I think that's the best way to get to the people here in America, because it's 1% of the population. I view it as a sort of advertising campaign for the church. No, but you have to. I think what has been a very big issue was, yes, the I don't want to say liberalization, because the church is apolitical, but what you say is the softness, especially of those who don't want to actually look into it. They want to live a worldly life. They
Right.
don't really care about their salvation, or they don't know.
Well, there's an interesting thing that I found out about recently that Resident Sleeper knows about, that we've been dealing with in the Discord sphere, is that the OCF, the Orthodox Christian Fellowship organization for college students, they have Monophysite presidents of their chapters that are recommending Monophysite books. And when that was called out, the director of ministries for the OCF said, well, like, this is underneath like the bishops seem like they're fine with it, so if you want to go against the bishop, you can. And we just went, yeah, no, it's heretical, so like, yeah, we'll go and we'll write letters and stuff. But if people don't say anything, someone's going to join as a college student the Orthodox Christian Fellowship, which, again, it's not a church, but it's a church associated organization. And then there's going to be a Monophysite in there leading prayers and talking about Monophysitism, and them saying, no, we're Orthodox. We're just as Orthodox as you. And that's their mentality. And we can't sit back.
I've been actively pursuing this issue with the OCF. It's something that I think needs to be addressed at one point. But right now we have been met with being brushed off by sending these very long paragraphs that really never answer a question, or to getting our questions ignored completely and saying, this is what our Council of Bishops says. And looking into it further, it's been an entire mess. What they're promoting goes against church councils, goes against canons. We've been trying to make this well known, and we've either been muted, shut down, been told take it up with the clergy, which we are planning on doing. We just need more support eventually. But it's been a mess trying to get these people to actually let us speak about these issues.
Is this all email too and stuff? Most of the communication?
There's been emails, there's been messages on their Instagram, there's been the emails get ignored. They always get ignored.
Right.
Or they get the copy paste messages on their Instagram.
Or clergy GPT response. Gotta watch out for that.
We've noticed the most response towards their Discord, because that's where a lot of the what are they called? People in charge are trying to moderate, trying to bring more people in. And we've gotten the most response from there, but even then it's been brushing off these issues.
Yeah, consumer corporate culture is like gas station sushi. You stay away from it, and you tell your friends to stay away, because it only leads to crap and only crap.
Now, I got a question. How many people do you think don't want to know how bad the culture is? When we talked about this kind of like laziness and just wanted to be in it. But if they did see it,
I think there's a lot of...
I would say the majority of people. I mean, one of the things, I was doing research today looking at fascism and really the continuation of it post World War II, and how, really the Nazis never lost if you start to really trace everything. How many people want to know about that? Most people don't want to know about what's true, dude. No, I mean, I obviously I'm not talking to you directly, but just it's like I was thinking about just telling, like, who am I going to tell? I was at the gym today talking to one of the trainers, my buddy, and he was like, "Oh, what are you reading about right now?" And I was talking about, "Oh yeah, the chapter today was on Laurel Canyon." I started naming all the different bands and stuff. He's like, "Dang, really?" And it's like, well, who are you going to tell any of this stuff to? Like most people don't want to know about the culture. Most people don't want to know about the secret societies, the intelligence agencies, where this all is going, who funds everything. Most people don't want to know. And when you do, it's like, what are you going to do then? That was like the conversation I had with somebody before. It's like, well, now what? You put all the dots together. This was a one-on-one. Somebody had done. He was actually a fan of you, Jim Bob. So he was like, yeah, as Jim Bob said, I've already opened up all the folders. And it was about the JQ question. And it's like, and he's like, it's giving me anxiety. And it's like, yeah, bro, now what? What are you going to do? Like, well, I don't know. And he was like, well, I was going to tell somebody. It's like, you're going to tell somebody and it's going to change the world. Dude, shut up.
Yeah, like bumper stickers. You cover the back of your car with bumper stickers. This one guy actually told me this. He was like, I'm like, what are you doing with all this info? This was like the tipping point of me just exiting Trutherville, the folder chasing thing. Cause this was the epitome. He was like, I put the stickers on my car and I drive through the town. Like that was his truth or apologetics. And I was like, okay, I'm done. I'm done.
Stand up and start clapping.
Yeah. They're like unbelievable. Yeah, they honk to him. They have like horns on the sidewalk and they're honking him. Anyway, I got to go pick up my daughter from piano, but thanks for having me.
Thanks for hopping on, brother. God bless you.
See ya.
Yeah. And like the guy that I was talking to that was a fan of Jim Bob's, it was in a one-on-one and he was a really nice guy. And if he's watching, shout out to you, bro. I'm not going to say your name, but he got it. He saw the whole picture. He just didn't have orthodoxy. And so it's like, you see everything in the world. You've already looked into the secret societies. You looked into things I was talking about, the propagation of fascism post-World War II and who's really in power. And then it's like, well, what are you going to do? It's like the only thing you can do is pray, because how are you going to change it? You're going to change it by you saving your own soul. And then the relationships you have with people. It's like once you become Orthodox, you realize the only thing that matters is your relationships. The relationships you have with your parents, your loved ones, your wife, your children. What else is there?
Well, remember
what else is there?
Remember the first day of Montanica 2 years ago at the very first one when Father Ananias gave his talk, and then there was some guy going, but what are we going to do?
Yeah.
And
the Fed.
Yeah, exactly. But one by one, Patrick said, build communities, live your life, build communities, find your skills and use your skills to propagate knowledge of the church and live your life and build communities. And then I said the same thing and 3 other people said the same thing. And he just went, but what do we do? What do we do? It's like, that's what you do. You engage, if you're not a monk, if you're a monk, you need to, have your obedience to your abbot, right? And you need to do what they say. But we need to engage in the world and figure out how we can engage in the world in a way that is, fruitful for God.
I think we get a lot of the thing of people asking, like for that, what do we do or whatever. I think a lot of it comes down to people live in this dopamine-ridden society where they want an instant solution. So they just want, well, what do I do that I can get, something nice? It's not, I have to go because if I'm going to build a community, then it's a lot of like hard, boring work. There's no glory, like immediate glory in it. You're not you're not on the news. You're not, becoming this kind of you're not gaining that notoriety that I think a lot of people want. And that's, I think, why they're averse to, there's a group of people that are averse to those kinds of solutions, because they're like, it's not immediate. It's not that it's not what they saw in the movies, because people live in this hyper real world where they think that everything should be like a movie, and when it isn't, then it's like this gap in perception with them. So
right, yeah, John, they're or not John Connor, right? They're like, okay, what are we gonna do now? Oh, John Connor, yeah, no, bro. It's like you get on your knees, you pray before you go to bed. Like you make sure that you don't, you're not going to Gnostic pill everybody. That's what everybody wants. I'm just going to tell them, like, Jim Bob says I'm going to tell them about everything. Bro, you're going to like ruin all your relationships. Like your grandma doesn't need to hear that. Like, you need to ask her if you need to help her with the dishes. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, what are you gonna do? Telling your grandma about the Federal Reserve?
Wasn't it?
And every time they print $1, Grandma, every time they print another $, it's just like my
wasn't
back
it
hurts.
Saint Seraphim of Sarov that said, "Become saved yourself, and 1,000 around you will follow"?
You're right.
Yeah. So this is the point I wanted to make, because I was going to say the same thing you guys just did. That for me, it just brings you deeper into orthodoxy in a more prayerful life, because that's the only solution, I think, for anybody who's here. But when people start saying it causes anxiety to talk about these geopolitical things, and we can't listen to Jay, and then they want to roll in people like Father Hears, who's all about taking this to praying more. It's so like disingenuous.
Right.
And to equate them as being the same too. Like to say like Father Trenum is the same as Jay too. Right? Like that's just absurd. And it maybe if like some of our other leadership could just address these things calmly and say, and the answer is to go to church more and be a better person with your family and be more orthodox, maybe you could address and alleviate some of that anxiety instead of silencing the conversation and having to come in and argue about whether or not we can even talk about these things might feel that anxiety.
I was speaking to a monk about this kind of issue, and he looked at me dead in the eyes and he said, "You know, my grandmother never knew any theology. But when she was confronted with a Protestant who came to our home, and the Protestant was speaking about what he believes, my grandmother, who has only ever gone to church, looked at him and said, 'You sound like a heretic.'" And that was his sort of response to people doing this hyper sense of like, "Oh, I'm going to correct you on literally every single thing you're doing," rather than, trying to gently say, "Hey, what you're doing is wrong. Here's why it's wrong," and have conversations on it, bringing more people towards orthodoxy. But they had to live a full Orthodox life.
Right. Amen. We had a few super chats here. We could just run through a few of them. Mud says, "I'm a goatskin orthodoxy bro," and he followed that up with, "I'm a paper orthodoxy bro." Dean Lim 2 threw in 199 and said, "Great stream and topics, COTEL." And then he had a question for everybody. I was wanting to field this for anybody wanting to hop in. Do you have recommendations for non-corny Christian musicians and their music? And I did want to say, because I know Chase has already sort of thrown a jab at some of the Protestant worship music, but I have to reveal a bit of my hand. Is one of the top artists right now is Ryan Ellis, and I actually know him personally. So I can, he's a homie. He's Protestant. He's not Orthodox. He takes exactly the type of music you're talking about. He just won a Grammy. He was on Fox and Friends, but I've hung out with him privately. I know him personally, and he gets it, if you know what I'm saying. He's on the page. He gets it, what's going on in the world. And so, yeah, I just wanted to say, so I do listen to his stuff, even though with Chase, he would fall right into the category that you were talking about. But he's a great musician, and he's a guy that I personally know, and I respect him because I know what he believes in, even though it's not orthodoxy, but it's still a good Christian man who has a family and is like defending those values. But anyways, I want to open it up to all you guys. Do you have recommendations for non-corny Christian musicians and their music? What would you guys recommend? What do you guys listen to?
It's a really good band. And real quick, on the note of, me making fun of like the Hillsong kind of stuff, I just don't like that kind of music. It's totally fine though, as long as there's not some super whack theological thing in it that you need to pay attention to then and chuck it out when you hear it.
Right.
But it has its place. And I think that if music like what you're talking about was the pop music of the day, it would impact our society in a good way.
Right.
If that was the pop music. But Towers is really good. TOW''RS. They're
Can you share it? Just write it in the chat so people can see it.
Yeah, it's Towers. It's a husband and a wife, and they do indie music, like acoustic music. That's really beautiful. It's that's really good. Mark Lettieri is really good. So he does straight instrumental music. He is a guitar player in the band called Snarky Puppy.
Yeah, Snarky. I was gonna say
and
Snarky
he
Puppy.
does instrumental music that is, you know, he has a whole album called Spark and Echo that he was like said, I wanted to make an instrumental album thinking about Genesis, and it's just interesting stuff. You know, a lot of bands like Snarky Puppy's not a Christian band whatsoever. They're not.
They've had some Christian albums though, like Christian focused albums. I can't remember off the top of my head.
I don't think they have.
No, they had one.
But yeah, there's a bunch. Nickelback, yep, Nickelback's
great.
Anybody, Resident Sleeper, what do you listen to, bro? Is it just your own accordion music? Do you just play in front of a mirror and just like that's how you get down, or what?
I can't say because I studied.
Are you naked with just the accordion between your legs?
All the time. I was a music education major previously, and I can't really say I go out of my way to listen to music unless I really want to, and even then, it's usually just jazz or classical, no lyrics. So yeah. I can't really say I listen to too much music.
Yeah, I listen to a lot of like lo-fi. It's like a mixture of like jazz, you know, light hip hop. No words though. I like the stuff with no words. I listen to a lot of like country music, bluegrass, Americana type music, classical jazz. And then when it comes to like lifting weights, that's where I get into my more degenerate stuff. It's like hardcore EDM, dubstep, like metal, like mixture, hip hop, stuff like that. But that really is for a certain mood. So, yeah. What about welcome our buddy Chase? God bless you, bro. What's going on, man? And Adam McGill, you've been kind of quiet, bro. If you got anything you want to throw in, feel free.
I have kind of like a similar question that's like sort of off topic but sort of similar. I don't know if you've I know you've talked to Iberboyo a few times.
Yeah, he'll be on tomorrow. Actually, we're going to be doing a debate on was Christianity the woke religion of Rome?
Yes, I was about to ask. Yes, yeah, that's exactly what I was going to ask. Yeah, he sort of.
Oh, we're going to get into it tomorrow. It should be fun.
Yeah,
it'll be in the day, so I think that's going to be around 3:30 Eastern Standard Time. Based on that accent, I take it that you're in GMT. Time zone.
From the north of Ireland.
So that'd be like 7:30 your time. Okay.
Yeah. That's all I wanted to ask.
Yeah, we're gonna be getting into it tomorrow. Again, I appreciate him coming on, and we're gonna be testing each other's understanding of our understanding of history and philosophy and how exactly the Roman Empire unfolded and fell apart. So should be a lot of fun.
Totally forgot to mention the Byzantine Empire and stuff like that. Yeah, it's very.
Well, just based on the comments, I saw he shared like an AI of like the presidents arguing about Byzantium, and he was mocking, Saint Justinian's wife because she was pulled out of a brothel, so she was a prostitute. But again, it should be interesting. I do recommend tuning in tomorrow. I'm going to be very cordial, but also I want to defend my faith because this is something that means a lot to me, and it's something that I'm willing to die for. So we'll see how it goes. Good but stuff. I appreciate Uber Boy. He's always a good sport.
Yeah, he seems like a good lad, but he needs to be less cringy at the minute.
I know. Well, dude, yeah. Well, we'll get into it. He's still on his Nietzschean. He's still on his 2017, 2018 Jordan Peterson kick, where everything's Nietzsche and Jung. So we'll try to bring him into in 2023, maybe.
I'll do.
But yeah, anybody? Jared Fetz.
Hey guys,
brother, premium member. Bro, we got a meeting tomorrow night, by the way.
Oh yeah. I'm going to be probably working on some music tomorrow night, but so I'm not sure if I'll be over there. I've got
You want to speak about our topic? Got anything you want to say in particular?
Yeah, I do. So actually, I just came in like 5 minutes ago. You guys started talking about music, and I actually just finished recording a song in Massachusetts just Sunday.
How'd that go?
It went really well. I think everybody's gonna like it. It's a song about asking God for the apocalypse. It's called "Pleading for Apocalypse," nice. And it's kind of big giant rock ballad slash crescendo of a song.
What genre would you consider that? Just rock and roll?
So if you've ever heard Muse, it's a similar genre to whatever rock Muse does.
Okay.
So it'll be out next week.
Nice, man.
Nice.
Well, where is it going to be out? Why don't you chill your
I'm gonna first have it out on YouTube. It'll be it's a crowdfunded project for a small studio called Plaid Dog Studios, and my page will be up next week. And it's just my name, Jared Fetzer.
Nice.
But I'll share the link with DPH, and if he wants to put it out, he's more than welcome to.
Awesome. I'll definitely share it with our premium members for sure.
I gotta go, guys. I'll see
All
you
right.
guys later.
Hey, thanks for hopping on, brother. Continue the great music, by the way. Again, you're really talented. I appreciate it. You're
Thank
awesome,
you.
dude.
God bless.
God bless.
I got
Hey, so what
one
you and you, man?
recommendation for music. If you guys have you ever heard of a band called The Hallowed? The Hallowed? Yeah.
The Hallowed? No, I've never heard.
Yeah, he's like a younger, he's like in his 20s, but it's like kind of like garage. He probably would not like my description of it, but I'm near 40. But it's like kind of reminds me of like punk, like out of a garage, but he's just one guy and he has pretty good videos and he's a trad Catholic. So he says he has love for the Orthodox bros, but he doesn't get us, obviously. But but his music is pretty good. He's not bad.
Right here.
Yeah, they have some pretty good videos. The one I like is the Holy Spirit. So shout out to the Hallowed. He's a good sport because I'm in his DMs talking to him for the over past 2 years.
Hopping
He's
in his DMs.
Yeah, well, we were friends on Instagram back when I had one. So and then he's had a few like live streams where he understands a lot. So his music's pretty good. But that's one recommendation of a new like independent like Christian guy I think's pretty good.
Yeah.
But I had to come on because I heard my my patristic faith sense was tingling when y'all were talking about some of the internet orthodoxy stuff.
Oh,
and,
yeah, the ortho drama.
Yeah,
you like patristic faith,
man. It's funny, and David, you'll understand this, but since we like people don't know, I handle the website and all the graphics and all that stuff for it. And when we first started that, it was funny. We didn't really get any drama or anything from anybody on the sanctioned internet orthodoxy. We would get blowback from like the ortho bros about things. So
right.
There was a point where I was like, it was just me doing all the work, and I put up an image for one of Father Spirit and Bailey's things. It was like a goat's head, and it was talking about, maybe it was like a lamb's face, and like the Telegram just blew up like, oh, we knew it. Patristic faith is another New World Order, like Luciferian group trying to subvert orthodoxy. And I was like,
I remember that. Yeah. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah,
I was like, Father Deacon, did they know it's just me? Like just this kid from Kentucky trying to help you guys out.
But the cool thing is that our community is like, hey, that's not a good image, not knocking your work or something, but it shows that our community cares about stuff like that. You know what I mean? Where I would rather that be the case than just going, oh yeah, whatever, Monophysites, Eastern Orthodox, Roman Catholic, it's all the same thing. Who cares?
Yeah, it's funny. It's like we tried to be pretty good, but it seems like we'll get thrown in with like the ultra rigorous, right? DPH, you'll get thrown in there like, but we've been getting like trouble from them, and like you could probably speak to it, Chase, in the Discord for years and years and years. There's always this constant conversation with the guys trying to reel them in, and you can't find any of that kind of content on patristic faith because we have, Father John Whiteford, Father Spirit and Bailey,
Turbo,
like
Father Zachariah Lynch.
Who are
Father
these
Deacon
people
Dr.
that?
Ananias.
Yeah, who are these
Abbot
rigorous?
Trifon.
Yeah.
Well, rigorous doesn't, when you ask these people, like I asked Ben Cabe Theoria, who went on an attack against Father Ananias and Jay, and he said that Father Ananias thinks he's in the church, intimating that he's not in the church, which is insane. when Father Ananias was saying pray for a apostate priest who apostatized to Roman Catholicism.
Right.
When I had a talk with him, he said to me, well, these rigorous, and he mentioned you, Patrick, of course. He goes, these rigorous David Patrick Harry, Jay Dyer, Father Ananias, Father John Whiteford. I go, what's a rigorist and how are they rigorists? And he said something about baptism and reception. And I said, every single person you just named will say, however you're received is up to your priest.
The economy of the church, bro. That's
I think
in the church. And they don't care. They don't listen. They just use the term rigorist. It's like conspiracy theory, or now in the philosophy circles, people, somebody sent me some screenshots and it was an atheist circle going, oh, that Chase Haggard guy. Oh, he's just a pre-supper, and everyone's response, lol, pre-sup.
Pre-sup.
You can't engage with it, so you just use this term pre-sup, conspiracy theorist, rigorist. It means nothing. It means nothing.
Forgive me. This gets me, like, obviously I'm very passionate because I serve the ministry. So, like, I get really upset by this stuff, and people don't know that what I do. So they'll say things in front of me that it's just like, it blows my mind. But it's unfortunate, and I've been around some like high profile people, and I'm not going to name names or anything like that are higher up in the church. So I see both sides of like these different conversations, and what really sticks out to me, and I won't get your channel flagged or anything, DPH, but it really
don't use any no words.
No, I know. I'm just letting you know. I know what's going on. It's all about the jabs. It's all about the jabbies and those specific critiques. And I don't care what anyone says. That's literally what it is. It's the fact that there was critiques at that one period of time that were, and that's it. They'll try to say everything else, and they go around to churches and they try to steer people away from these people. But there's nothing beyond the fact that there was just a pointed critique. And that's what it was. Yeah. And that's not accepted.
A close friend of mine who lives around the same area, we go to the same Orthodox church, went to a Orthodoxy 101 class at the church I'm going to, and they were basically saying, oh yeah, don't listen to Jay Dyer. He's like with Alex Jones and all this stuff about OCA? Jay Dyer. Yeah, it's OCA.
It's OCA, exactly. And so people, sorry to, I know this is off the topic that we were talking about, but I can connect it back to it in a second. But the people that are doing this, that's what they're pushing for. And they're pushing for a reunion with Rome. They're pushing for all this ecumenism. And you ask them a single reason why, and they'll just go, well, conspiracy theory. And you can go, what theory? Because everything that he said is just geopolitical books and reading through these people's books. And what is he wrong on theologically? Nothing. He's mean. And this is a reason why in the secular world, right, the secular internet, we need to be engaged in these conversations. We need to be engaged in the art and the contemporary conversations happening today through an Orthodox lens. And the more we're doing that, there's going to be silly people like that say dumb stuff. While the converts pull in by the hundreds, there's 30 people baptized at a Portland, Oregon church last year that a friend attends.
Wow.
Most of them were influenced by Jay and David Patrick Harry and Father Ananias and all these other people. Where are these other people? They're nowhere to be found. It's anyway.
Yeah, it's literally just about closing down churches. Like, I know a lot of us that have been around for a while, we were knocking on the door at Pascha whenever the doors were shut.
Right.
We were new converts. So this is our new life. This is our life. So we don't forget these formative things. So it's obviously a huge impact on us. And so if you look at 99% of the content that you guys put out or that gets published on patristic faith, it's just classic patristic stuff. It has nothing to do with any of that. There's just a little bit out there. Some of the stuff that Father Deacon wrote was really good from a philosophy of science perspective, or maybe like some stuff he posted of Father Zechariah when he ties things to Bolshevism or whatever. But the majority of it is Abbot Trifon, Spirit and Bailey. They're they're just talking about the church calendar, right? They're talking about what scripture was that day and then tying it to a message. That's really the bulk of our work. So,
well, and anytime they do say something, like I know Father Trenum or Spirit on Bailey, anytime they do say something that is a bit rigorous, they cite at least 17 church fathers. Like, it's kind of crazy, like how he's like, oh, they're rigorous. I'm like, they're just literally quoting all the church fathers that you guys kiss the icons of.
Right. Hey, Wade, I want to bring you in, brother. Welcome.
Hi, how's it going?
Yeah. You got anything on the topic at hand, what we're talking about?
Yeah, well, not like specifically right now, but just this music in general.
Yeah.
So I I did grow up in what we call the hardcore scene, which is sort of like an offshoot of like punk rock. And so loud, fast, aggressive music, and like a subset of that was like Christian hardcore. And so like still loud, aggressive, fast, yelling, no singing, just and what we would call heavy music, but it's lyrics based around faith. And then I had a question for you guys, like what your thoughts on that was, because there's no melody, but these dudes are just yelling about God and, songs about like anti-abortion songs and, just stuff like that. And I just, I was curious on your thoughts on that, but then also there was a couple weeks ago, some dude was lifting weights when he called in, and he do you remember? And he asked you like what music to listen to while working out, and then I was like yelling at my laptop like, dude, I have all these bands that I grew up listening to that would be great because it's still heavy and aggressive, but they're singing about positive things,
Right.
So I guess to go back to the first thing was like, what are your guys' thoughts on something like that? Because it's not melody, it's not singing, but it's aggressive, but with like a positive influence,
I actually asked this question to my priest, and he runs an online ministry called the St. Paisios Brotherhood. And so he's talking to men all the time that are coming to the church. So I could just regurgitate what he said. Because we had a local meetup down here in Florida, and we had a guy that came out of like the hardcore scene. So he had like tattoos of everything all over him. He had occult symbols, like he was in the scene, right? And he was asking the same question. And Father was really blunt to the point. He says, like, as guys coming to the church, we're like extremely damaged. Like, we don't really come into the church unless there's like some sort of like deep soul pain or wound that we're trying to heal in the church, right? And he said that it's probably best to not retread those paths. It's so specific because even the type of music that you're hearing. So even if you're listening, this is maybe controversial because it was hard for this kid to hear too, but he said that it's probably best not to just kind of step away from that, because it's going to, these are my words now, it's probably going to like bring about some of the old man that you're trying to get rid of. So maybe like he pointed people to more of like easier stuff like classical music and obviously like chants, and he's a big fan of like some of the Georgian chants and stuff like that. But that was his
for working out. Like, again, to the point that Wade was bringing up, again, I don't listen to very Christian music when I'm trying to crush a PR or something. So
listen, I would recommend the Church of the Eternal Logos, man. If you're gonna, I think lifting and learning is the way to go.
That's true. I actually do listen to some podcasts, but
yeah, I don't know.
What's interesting is people have passionate reactions to classical music, and they can have a past with classical music. There's nothing bad inherently about any style of music. And for that particular person, it sounds like that priest was giving spiritual advice to that particular person, right. Which, again, we're not the people to be giving spiritual. Not saying you are. I'm just saying in general.
Don't ask me.
We don't give spiritual advice to anybody. And somebody can have that same relationship with classical music. Father Seraphim Rose had that relationship with classical music. He decided, I can't listen to this because something gets stirred up in me that's not positive. Right. Your priest likes classical music. That doesn't mean it's bad. That doesn't mean your priest is wrong or Father Seraphim Rose is wrong. But I think to answer Wade's question from my perspective, there's a place for positivity of any tool, right? Any messaging tool of music, of art. It sounds like that music's positive. For myself, you know, I'll listen to high energy music. I don't like listening to aggressive music because I can get combative. And so I watch out for that. And my priest, you know, if I brought that up to him, he would probably give me the advice that that priest gave to that friend of yours, saying like, hey, it's probably best you don't listen to this. So I think there's a place for it, but on an individual level, as long as it's not overtly filthy, right? And something that's just arousing the passions, like Jim Bob just cut me off when I was about to say, which is very rude. I think it's probably fine, but with spiritual stuff, I mean, definitely.
Well, I have a question I'd like to throw out there.
Before you, just real quick, Chase, right before you, I talked with Father Turbo, and one of the friends, Buck Johnson, he has the Counterflow podcast, and Father Turbo, like, he recommended like a super hardcore metal band, but it was like Christian, so all their lyrics were Christian, but it went real hard in the paint. And
I know those guys. Like,
I think
with those guys. Like,
I think
the bands that I believe the bands that Father Turbo was recommending, those are my buddies. Like,
oh, okay,
that's who I grew up with.
Yeah.
So that's why I was
So Father Turbo, he gave a green light on it.
Yeah, and I know it's coming from a positive source, but it's just kind of, it would be perceived as aggressive to, you know, somebody who's the uninitiated, you could say, you know, so if somebody didn't like come from that. And somebody in the chat earlier actually mentioned the band Holy Name. So I haven't talked to the guy in years, but that's a buddy of mine, Tommy. He, again, kind of grew up in that, but Holy Name, I don't know if he's baptized Orthodox yet, or if he's just a catechumen or what, but he started a band Holy Name that is very influenced by Orthodoxy, and he's singing, and it's like, it's beautiful, but it's also, it also gets pretty gnarly at some point. So I would say that's a good recommendation. Right? Yeah. And I would say that's a good recommendation for anybody who is looking for something like that. It's really
Holy Name, one word.
Holy Name.
Now, yeah.
I think their Instagram is Holy X Name. I haven't talked to, the singer's name is Tommy. I haven't talked to him or seen him in years, but that's his new project, and it's really good.
These people right here?
Yeah, that's the guy.
Kind of like from what
he describes it as violent worship.
Exactly, yeah.
Kind of like what I always think of whenever I'm asking myself questions. Why am I singing rock music? Like, it's kind of the music I sing is melodic, but it's also kind of gets aggressive and repetitive. Especially the song I just made. It gets a little gritty in the chorus. But I'm always asking myself, why am I actually communicating that? Is because I'm trying to communicate an idea I had when I was praying. That's what the song is about. It's so I was praying one day for God to bring justice and mercy on the world, whatever that meant. And it was in 2020, and I just wanted like everything to be out in the open and people to know what was going on. And I was basically pleading for God to bring about an apocalypse of some sort. And when I say apocalypse, I mean the revelation of something. And that gets aggressive. In the prayer, I even got aggressive with God because I saw the pain that I was going through and my family was going through. And I saw the injustices happening, and it made me angry. But, you know, it says to be angry and do not sin, which means don't take it too far. And I think that when you're conveying a message in music, you have to have that kind of intention behind it as well. So I think when you're listening to music, especially yourself, just search your intentions, and of course talk to a spiritual father about it. And I'm not quite Orthodox yet. I'm still in the steps of becoming a catechumen and finding a church. So I think you really need to have a spiritual father to guide you, and that's why it's important. So he can kind of help you be an outside light on the inward war that's happening.
Right.
Hey, can I ask my question now? I'm thinking it'd be a really good one.
Yeah. Feel free. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, it's totally fine. That was good.
Thank you.
I went to a wedding Saturday, an old college friend, and I took my fiance, and it was, a lot of great people there, but just they're not Orthodox, and so it was like a typical wedding. And I'm getting married this summer.
Congratulations, brother.
Hey, thank you. It's been a long road, but we're getting there.
Hey, all of us, man.
Right.
It's all been a long road. I feel you.
Yeah. So my question is like, I was on the dance floor, because my fiance likes to dance, and so, but the kind of music that they play at these weddings are just like I'm near 40, so the music they were playing, my buddy's, he's like mid-30s, so it was like Yin Yang Twins came on.
Yeah.
And all these like, yes. And I was like, I mean, that's an aggressive song. You want to talk about aggressive, right? So like, how? Lots of sweat and all kinds of things. So I've never actually been to an Orthodox wedding. I don't know.
Dancing.
Yeah, but I don't.
Oh, yeah.
I figured like you try not to scandalize everybody because it's part of it, right? So like, I'm curious, Chase, like the one that you went to, did they just play ABBA the whole time? Like, what's going on?
Well, I don't know about ABBA, but I mean, sure. I mean, I think people like the receptions. It's important. People should. You should just in general. You shouldn't be being inappropriate. Like you shouldn't be getting inappropriate. Did I get low, Chase? I'm a phenomenal dancer. I am a phenomenal dancer. But you shouldn't be getting inappropriate. But like, there's like good secular music playing, and you're just dancing, having fun, and hopefully you know how to actually dance. And I'm opening up an online dance studio. I'm just kidding. We actually had a pro dancer on the stream earlier. He could have told you, but I mean, I don't, at a wedding, if it's like crazy music, sometimes like some of the nuts stuff they play, I just go and grab a beer.
Yeah, that's what we did.
Talk to the old people for a second, and then they start playing, some disco or something. Oh yeah, I'm back out there.
Right. It was fun. It's been a while since I've been to a wedding, but yeah, there's some moments I was just like I was like, wow, okay, I've come a long way. This isn't that Yin Yang song. It is not okay. It's just not okay.
Yeah, I've been to a couple Orthodox weddings, and in the reception, it was kind of your milquetoast white people music, like 80s rock and some ballad songs, romantic
Dancing
songs,
Queen.
and a couple more hip hop songs. With my wedding, I don't know how much music I want to play at the reception. I want to have like a super formal wedding.
Precept debate.
Nope, not even that. My goal is I'm the only Orthodox person, all my friend group, all my family, all the people I grew up with. So my goal is to take them and have them experience the most beautiful wedding they've ever seen, and wholesome and religious wedding. And so then the reception, I don't know what I'm going to do. I guess I have to talk about that to the woman I marry, but I don't want it to be too secular. But at the same time, I'm not, again, like I said, the music I listen to when I work out, or I don't know. I'm not as scandalized, but I totally get your point. The more Orthodox you become, the more sensitive you are to it, especially if you don't listen to it that much.
Chase, are you available in July?
I'm not interested.
He's not single now.
I'm not. Well, I'm single, but I'm not interested.
You don't want to be my wedding singer? I love that Christmas song that you made. I thought that Fauci song.
Yeah, the Fauci one. Yeah.
Sing about the Fauci ouchie.
But yeah, even no matter how many times you put on a nice cowboy hat, you're not the one for me. I'm not interested, and you're engaged, so we
well, I meant like to be my wedding singer, but I like where your head's at.
We'll talk later. We could maybe get a gypsy jazz to play some swing music for you.
Yeah, I was going to open it up for Morgan, Ruth, welcome, and Timothy.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm newer to the conversation, so I've missed a lot. I noticed that a lot of people were kind of separating the sacred from the secular. Is that something that everyone here agrees with, that there is this distinct line between the sacred and secular? Or is it possible for things that were once perceived as secular can actually be redeemed and viewed as sacred if someone's like individual
Can you
heart
give us an
has...
example? I'm not sure exactly what you mean.
Okay, I studied art history, and so I'm coming from an art background, and practice art myself. And so, like in a lot of contemporary art that I would have previously viewed as secular and not glorifying to God whatsoever, I now have a different perspective towards that, and I more so see it as one part of a greater story in which humanity is seeking and searching for beauty and truth. And so perhaps it's not fully sacred, but I see something sacred about that part in the process that is still incomplete.
I think it kind of relates to how Chase and I opened up. We kind of spoke for about 40, 50 minutes before people started hopping on about art, like whether you're a plumber, a construction worker, a painter, a musician, an author, it's the expression of oneself. And so the medium isn't as important as the content. So if you're looking at art history, I don't know if you're looking at surrealist or contemporary, you're talking about contemporary art, Dada forms, or abstract expressionism, but it's less about the medium. Certainly you could then critique it in regards to how those mediums sort of butt up against traditional understandings of art and aesthetics and beauties. But I would agree with you that, you know, the line, I guess the point was, how do Orthodox artists engage in secular culture? And our general idea was that you kind of hop in and then you express yourself through the mediums that God's given you to express yourself in.
Okay, awesome.
So what kind of art do you do?
Well, I'm just starting to re-engage with it. I've been on a kind of a hiatus, but my main mediums are poetry and oil painting.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
And even poetry, like we're saying, not everything has to be about Jesus Christ. You know, Chase plays blues music, like bluegrass music. So
gypsy jazz, but I can play
gypsy jazz. Okay,
it's
if we're gonna
fine,
really
whatever. Keep going. It's not that big a deal. I'm not mad. It's fine. Just go.
But again, like not all the lyrics are necessarily explicitly about God or the Trinity or Jesus. And so we would say that, you know, that is not the point, but kind of like what you're hinting at, more so the point is the beauty of whatever you're doing. And so we would argue that generally the demonic force is creating things uglier and uglier and uglier. So whether you're into poetry, for example, like it's just about the beauty and the intentionality and the competency. Like the goal for us Orthodox is just to become as competent as possible, whatever our medium is. I would argue. Anybody else have anything regarding that? I mean, feel free to hop in.
I think you hit the nail on the head. I do think that, and of course you could be using the word differently than I would use it, but I think there, with something being actually holy, right? Like an icon or a church or something like that. I think that there does need to be that dividing line, but then the strict dividing line of, oh, that's secular, unless it's sinful, right? That's a different thing. Then we know it's sinful. But if it's, you know, poetry or music or whatever it is, I'm going to approach music every single time, even if it's, whether it's my indie rock stuff that has lyrics or it's instrumental gypsy jazz, as an Orthodox Christian, I'm always going to approach it that way. And so I think that on that side of things, we shouldn't have that dividing line between secular and Orthodox, but we should have the dividing line between something's holy, a cross, right? An icon, a church, and something's not inherently holy.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. It's more, the distinction is more the church and the world, and then we're just taking ourselves, we're moving from the world into the church, and then we're going back from the church and then expressing ourselves as beautifully and as competently as possible into the world within secular culture. Because that was my general thesis to begin with, is that I would actually agree with you, Morgan, kind of where you're coming from, is that the people who are too rigid, like, oh, well, we're Orthodox, we can't engage in rock music, or we can't do. No, what are you talking about, dude? Shut up. Like that's the exact opposite. You're conceding all the ground to, proverbially our enemies or the opponents or the people that are pushing the contrary message. We need to move into secular culture. I know a friend who's a very popular country music singer who's Orthodox. That's wonderful. Like, the point is to just make beautiful things and get people to say, oh, wow, that was really good. What's your inspiration for creativity? Why do you say that? What makes you do this?
Yep.
Yeah, that's great. Are you guys familiar with Father Christopher Foley, I think his name is?
Nope.
Yeah, he's like he was a rock artist and then came from an evangelical background, then deconstructed and ended up becoming an Orthodox priest. And then the members of his band ended up converting to Orthodoxy as well. Super interesting guy. I heard his podcast. I heard him interviewed on a podcast called Makers and Mystics.
I've heard of him. I've heard of that story.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you have his link, Morgan? You can share it in the private chat here, and then I can pull it up for people.
That'd be a cool interview, Patrick.
Hey, Christopher, again, one of our Ortho brothers. Shout out to you, north of the border there, holding it down in BC. What's going on, my man?
Hey, I'm doing well. How are you?
Great, man. Good to see you.
Thank you. Yeah, good to be seen. Good to see you guys.
You want to speak a little bit, just again, introduce yourself, but you're an artist and what you do. And express what your work is and how you utilize your spirituality, your orthodoxy is expressed through your work and your art.
Thank you. Yeah, why I hopped on. So I'm a landscape architect, and so I work and I design private gardens and parks and working on institution campuses, those kinds of things. And this is actually, I hopped on when Morgan asked her question, because I work a lot at the intersection between construction and development and God's creation. And so it does often kind of feel like I'm bridging those two worlds. I often say that I have a secret agenda that I'm often operating under the pretenses of trying to build gardens and beautiful things through the energies of God to inspire the nobility of the human spirit. And I think it's a pretty, and I'm pretty biased in these things, but it's a pretty tragic thing that North America doesn't really have a strong gardening culture, and so very few people have really ever experienced a beautiful garden. And a lot of what we engage with or come in contact with as far as the created world, especially in our urban landscapes, tends to be very banal, very repetitive, often forgotten, abused, littered with trash, etc.
Yeah.
But when you walk into a space that is, and much like, many of us, though, thankfully have experienced at least beautiful buildings. And you can appreciate when you really walk into a beautiful building, or particularly a beautiful church, that there is a semblance of orderliness to it, that there are divine principles that are being revealed to us when our human body enters a space and the proportion feels right, the color feels right, the sunlight, which unfortunately the sun is setting right now, is hitting my face in a weird way. The way the sunlight filters through the building, the way the acoustics work, all of these things are really considered when someone's designing a building, particularly a church. The same things are considered when one is designing a garden, but it tends to be a lot more subtle too, because the garden is more ephemeral. It tends to change and move and shift over time. The flowers and plants you see in the beginning of the year are not the flowers and plants that are predominant in the garden later in the year. But you're still working with proportion and timing and spatial understanding of how the human body moves through space. You're also building in, working with principles like the veil, for instance, where you're building in moments of mystery that encourage the person to engage with the environment. This is completely removed from our urban landscapes, where everything is because of SEPTED, which are basically pedestrian safety rules and regulations where you always have to have clear lines of sight. Those are removed, so you don't have any mystery in the urban landscape. But when you walk into a private garden where, the rules can be bent and broken a little bit more, you can introduce concepts that encourage someone to journey further into the garden. And those are the kinds of things that I like to play with when I'm designing something. And a lot of the clients that I have, some of them might be spiritual, not religious. Some of them are very secular, maybe even atheistic. Occasionally we get into those kinds of conversations, but it's not often. But there is an experience when people are in gardens that really does cause the heart to reach for something beyond what we experience every day. The banality of the gray Minecraft exterior of our urban landscapes. And so I think it's not music, but there is a certain poetry about it, and there is certainly a symphonic energy about it if you do it right. And
as we've spoke privately about the biblical importance of gardens, and so you can think about the Garden of Eden, and you can think about the sort of paradisical state in which God created man and woman, and then our fall from that garden, our fall out into the wilderness from a garden being something that is orchestrated and intentional, as opposed to the way that nature just sort of haphazardly, well, no, we won't say haphazardly, but certainly is less intentional from our standpoint. But then where does Christ take on the burdens except for the Garden of Gethsemane? Right.
That's
and so
right.
we see another important garden in which Christ has actually entered. And this is sort of the reunion of our redemption back. He's taking on the burden. And then the New Jerusalem is sort of our fulfillment of going back to the fullness of the garden. And
That's
so
right.
And so the garden itself is a really interesting symbolic concept, literal place that we can think of our theology. And I think, as Keenan said, it's a really cool occupation that you have in regards to curating experiences within space that's also natural.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yep. And you hit it right on the head, man. I grew up, so I was in the New Age movement for a long time. I would describe myself as spiritual, not religious, I guess. But I was involved in psychedelia and Native American traditions, sweat lodges, sun dances, that kind of thing. But I was also really heavily involved in the occult, and I was a Freemason for many years. Forgive me. But there are a lot of principles that are. There's a reason why people are attracted to those things, because there's an echo of truth to them. Not the fullness, certainly, but there is an echo of truth there. And when I came into Orthodoxy, suddenly, my whole life, everything that I had been presented to, the great providence of our good Lord, had brought me to a fullness of understanding my role in the world as designing gardens. And you really hit it on the head there. I mean, every day when I think about gardens, it's not just thinking about space and thinking about, people's experience, whether it's spring, summer, or fall, but it's actually thinking about how we participate in the creation that the good Lord has put us in. Because it is, and this is how we all do it, really, and why the metaphor of the garden is so apt, is that we take that which God has given us, the talents and gifts, and we recompose it. I'll use that for our musician friends, and we offer it back to God as priests within the ranks of His saints. And that is why I think the garden is such a good metaphor, because it encompasses everything that ultimately provides humanity their life, their sustenance, and their inspiration.
Right. Beautifully put.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody want to comment on pick that up?
Would that sort of be like, because in like Japanese culture, they're very like particular about, is that sort of like that, maybe the same idea, but just kind of not backed by God, sort of like the same energy or whatever, but not pointed in the right direction, like bonsai trees and stuff like that. They're so particular about plants and whatever.
Yeah. I wouldn't say that there's anything inherently wrong about the Japanese gardens.
Yeah.
I think they are revealing very much of what I'm trying to describe. In fact, you know, they take it in a whole nother direction. And so the orderliness that they put into their gardens, the attention to detail, even the way a branch will arc over a certain pathway, and the way it's been pruned over the last 20 or 50, even some cases 50 or 100 years, is supposed to impart a certain spatial understanding and experience where, particularly at the edge of a path and then on a clearing, they will often have a threshold of some kind. Sometimes that's a tree with a branch, and that's supposed to give you a sense of compression, so that when you exit out into that clearing, it gives you a sense of relief and opening, much like when we move from the narthex into the nave. Yeah.
It's amazing how all forms of art do something like that. They're all conveying some kind of experience like that, where it can assist you in, you know, feeling kind of the depths of, not the complete depths, obviously, but some of the depths of our human experience, which is a God-given thing. Whether it's, you know, tension in music, right? Where a blues player is bending from a flat third over a major chord up to a major third, like in a, you know, a blues solo, and you feel tense, and then you go, oh, wow, that relief, and you feel all that emotion. It is an amazing thing that whatever the art form is, whether it's building gardens, or it's painting, or it's poetry, or it's music, it's all pointing towards that same thing. Or it's pointing towards some aspect of our experience that's really messed up because of the fall.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Right. I got to split. Thank you guys for your time.
Wait, before you leave, one more thing. I just wanted to point out about the Japanese garden, because it's appropriate for my life, and maybe yours too. Because one great, one very common trope in a Japanese garden is the dead end. They will always include a dead end somewhere in the garden where a path forks, and you go to the end and it doesn't go anywhere. And so you're forced to return to the path you started on and take a different path. And this is the path, I now think of it as the path of the prodigal son. So that's another thing. If you're ever walking in a Japanese garden, you come across that. That's what they're doing there, is they're trying to give an homage to everyone, no matter they're Christian or not. At some point, they have to return to a point where they made the wrong decision and start over.
You're blowing my mind, dude. I'll see you guys later. Have a good night. Thank you.
Later.
Good night.
God bless. Yeah, again, we went back and forth for like an hour talking about gardens and how it's like just interpreting the scripture from that perspective. It's really incredible. And I know people just hearing you talk, it's like everybody's saying, that's awesome. Wow. So beautiful. Because the intentionality and the beauty and this way in which our intention is tied to nature itself, like a garden is a space in which we are separate from, but there's an intentional curation of something that is beyond ourselves. It's pointing to something transcendent by using our deliberate will fused with nature. And again, and really that's what Chase is hinting at too with music, because we talked about how tones and chords, these things are discovered. These pre-exist whether I exist or not. It's part of the logos. They're the logi of creation. And in a way, a garden's hinting at that in a different way that probably people a lot listening haven't thought about that.
Yeah. There's a lot of overlap, and I think that this highlights, you know, probably buried beneath the veneer of every artist's assumption of who they are and what they should be doing are these themes or means of engaging with the creator and his life.
Well, every single thing that we have that we can play with down here, everything that actually exists, it's created good. You know,
that's right.
Nature, plants, music, paint, all of these things, they're created good. And the only time it becomes bad is when we do what? We move our will away from him. So every time that you take different chords, or you take different plants and you arrange them in a good way, do that with chords or paint, you are participating with these tools that God created, or, you know, his uncreated energies. You're participating with creation in a harmonious way.
Yep.
Even if you're going to distort it to go and use on one level for like a pop song like Cardi B, On one level, she's taking and appealing to. She doesn't know this though. She doesn't. She would just go.
Well, she just drug you and take your money.
Yeah, she just wreck you and take your money. But she's appealing to these different objective categories of harmony and consonance and dissonance, and then she's taking that and orienting it towards death and destruction.
Right.
But she's still engaging with these blocks that God has given us to move around.
Right.
And I think
and
that's
that
one of the
perhaps
cool
makes
things.
it all the more dangerous.
I was going to say about the garden again, Christopher, feel free if you want to go anywhere, but how even in regards to poetry or music, or for me, research and words and trying to articulate ideas, but the garden, there is this unification with the natural world. There's like a real molding of something that's tactile, right? Me saying words, it is real, but it's not the same tactileness. Same thing with music. Same thing with poetry, but you can walk through a garden. You can touch the trees that you chose, the plants that you chose, you can see the colors that you chose. There's just a really, when you explore the idea, it's a very interesting way to be an artist. It kind of, you operate with a palette that other people don't get to use.
Right. Christopher, it reminds me of the great commission that God created Adam for, was to bring order to the chaos, right? Like a lot of what you're describing reminds me of that theme over and over again of just bringing order to chaos. And really it reminds me whenever I hiked up in Colorado, and I was looking at this beautiful like lake near these mountains, and I was like, this is perfectly ordered, but it's barely touched by humanity because the people just leave it alone and go look at it. But it reminds us like, oh, this looks so perfect. It's almost like it's fake, because everything is in the proper place. It kind of reminds me of like, that's the superior form of it, right? God's creation. But like, yeah, you have these tools that you're bringing order out of chaos in your own way. And yeah, those tools can be used for destruction as well. So no, it's beautiful the way you talk about it.
And in the same way, in light of what Chase just said, but God's creation isn't absent of us. And so I think the intentionality of a garden is emblematic of why God created the world in the first place. It's for this syncretic unification of him, his creation, us being made in the image, having free will, and then curating it and moving in harmony with his will and his intention and his creation. And so, if is the world more beautiful if humans don't exist and it's exactly like it is and everything, move fast forward 1,000 years and everything just grows, the cities are gone, or, and that's why you think, well, why is it that life began in the garden? It's something to really ponder, is that it's a symbol of the ways in which we meet and engage with God and his creation. I think it's a really interesting, again, theological exploration. I'm sure people are sitting here like, wow, I've never thought in gardens in this way. This is great.
Right.
Yeah. My creative mentor, he has a book called Naming the Animals, in which he talks about part of our unique design as God's creation is to actually co-create with him, and how God invites Adam to choose out of his free will, like what the names of the animals are, and whether you believe that was a literal story or not. Like there's some really powerful symbolism there. And one other story from scriptures that comes to mind, like as we're investigating this topic of like, what do we do with these tools? And like, are the tools just neutral, and how do we use those to like, quote unquote, glorify God, or how they can be used for destruction? I think of the first time in which there's communal worship in scriptures, and that's in the story of Exodus, right after the Israelites have crossed over into freedom from the oppression of Egypt. Miriam picks up a tambourine and like leads people through poetry into this like wonderful, glorious moment. And but if you think about like where those instruments would have come from, like that's all still coming from like Egyptian culture. Like that's still coming from like these pagan places. Right. And like if you think about where the gold would have come from for them to make like all of those intricate items that would be used in the tabernacle, like that's also coming from Egypt. And so again, just showcasing like how like gold can be used for idols and golden calves or for like beautiful art.
Right.
Well
Yeah,
said.
we can take all things. God, you know, like I think the saying is, God can take all evil and make it for good. So the saying, Morgan, you're hitting at a perfect point within Scripture, is that our job is not to flee from the world. Our job is to sanctify the world as the church does. That's the role of the church. Is we move into culture, we move into the world, we move into non-sacred space, and that's what really. That's a great way to sort of wrap up tonight's stream. Is we express ourselves and beautify and sanctify the space we inhabit. That's what it means to be Christian. That's what it means to follow Christ.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And, you know, whether you do that as a musician or as a painter, and I really like that you throw it out there because it is true. You do it as a plumber or a carpenter or a housewife or a student, you know, who's just still trying to find their way. There's an opportunity for us to participate and do just that, to offer it back to God intentionally by our participation with it and in it.
Jose, you hopped in right towards the end, my brother. Anything you want to chime in? Did you have something on your mind specifically? How's the baby girl doing?
She's doing great. So just finished paying off the last of the medical bills for her NICU stay. So that's hurting. But
glory to God.
She's fine. My wallet's still way lighter than it should be, but that's fine. That's
hey, a couple days she'll be able to get to work. You know.
Exactly. You know,
wait a year. They'll figure out something.
Exactly. Well, I mean, my son, he started helping his mother out in the kitchen at like 11 months. So that was just because he wanted to. Although it wasn't so much help, but we got some very cute photos of that. So yeah. But no, I had just a little bit in terms of music. The thing is, like, as people mentioned here before, the internet has enabled ideas to spread super rapidly. And the thing is, you look at the music, like not just popular music, but the music scene globally in general has been heavily dominated by America. But thanks to the internet, thanks to the fact that today, you know, being a blue collar musician is actually viable and feasible to do, and even be able to support a family off of. There's plenty of music all around the world of all different genres that you can grab your hands on, and from places that are far, far less corrupted than the United States. So, like people mentioned, like, you know, what to listen to, you know, for example, like metal for when lifting. So my 3-year-old, he likes to hang out with me when I'm lifting. So a lot of metal I just can't do, and that's right. I end up taking the Kawaii pill, which I warn against. But next thing you know, you're playing baby metal while you're you know, deadlifting. But yeah, and then there's also much more, you know, harder stuff too. Like I recommend the Who from Mongolia. They're absolutely fantastic. But yeah, and also Bloody Wood from India is another one. So it's just, you know, you can find a ton of stuff out there. There's a lot of variety out there, and it's also interesting to see people take, you know, their takes on stuff. Like, you know, I know Chase mentioned you know, gypsy jazz, and my favorite jazz honestly has come out of Japan. Like the stuff in the 70s, it's absolutely amazing what they were doing. Like it's, yeah, I have a deep admiration for it.
Right. Love it. Well, guys, I'm going to wrap up. Actually, I'm going to run through all the super chats again. Feel free to hang out. And if you guys have any comments, feel free to chime in and add them. I want to give a special thank you to Chase Haggard for hopping on and spending time with us. A major shout out to Twitch 307 for the $10 super chat. Music is the language of the creator. Shout out to Simon the Amputee throwing in $9.99, no comment. Shout out to Willie Jenkins, $5. Shout out to Dean Lim 2, who asked for recommendations for non-corny Christian music and musicians, which I think we kind of hit that through a whole variety of people. He also gave thanks for the topic tonight. Shout out to Mud, who identifies as a paper orthodoxy bro and a goatskin orthodoxy bro. I hope that's going well for you. And then shout out to Tatiana, who we have not addressed tonight. She threw in $20 and is a website or is a YouTube member here. Shout out to Tatiana, one of our good sisters. She says, God bless all my brothers and sisters in Christ. I find that I can't listen so much to the old music I listen to, stuff like Nin and Ministry. I'm not familiar with either one.
9 Inch Nails.
Yeah, 9-inch nails.
9-inch nails. Thank you, Chase. Don't forget to pray for the monks in Ukraine, y'all. Yeah, true about that. You guys have been seeing what's going on at the Lavra there in Kiev?
Yeah, it's
breaks my
horrible.
heart.
If people want to, obviously like pray for them, but another thing you can do is you can write respectful letters to your bishops and to your priests, to your metropolitans, or the metropolitans underneath the EP and underneath these churches, the Greek Orthodox Church of America, that Elpidophoros directly has to do with this. And you can write to them respectfully and pointedly. And I believe I forgot where it's posted. I'll try to find it and I'll put it in the comments of the YouTube video. There's a pre-written letter that has been vetted out by priests to send. And, that's another thing we can do. And obviously donating money towards the real church in Ukraine, not the schismatic church that Elpidophoros founded.
Yeah. Also, special shout out to the busiest doctor of them all, Dr. Vagisil, with the multiple super chats tonight. Thank you very much, brother. Also, a very special shout out to Adam_1912, his fellow Orthodox musician. Again, Chase said reach out to him. As you can see, his handle at Chase Haggard Music on Instagram. His link is in the video description for everybody, as well as the event that you're going to be playing on. You want to show that again,
Yeah. So that's called it's called Rebels for a Cause. It's going to be on June 3rd and June 4th. Jay Dyer is going to be speaking there. I'm going to be playing Meanie Jay Dyer is going to be there. I'm going to be playing some duo gypsy jazz there. It should be a great time. There'll be a link in the video description, and it should be awesome. Thanks again for having me.
Yeah, of course, man. And thank you, Adam_1912, for the very generous super chat. And then another shout out to, we had one come in while we were talking from Sid, throws in $40, no comment. Thank you so much, Sid, for the generous super chat. God bless you. Don't know if you're male or female. I assume you're male, given the demographic of this YouTube channel. And then the last one comes from our brother, who I asked to come on tonight. I shot him a message. Keenan Beats throws in $5 and says, I wish I could have hopped on tonight. It's been truly an incredible stream. Well, thank you so much, Keenan. Wish you would have as well. And Christopher, I'm so glad that you hopped on, brother, to talk about your experience with gardens. In fact, I'm going to clip that whole section, and I'm going to make that a whole YouTube clip. Yeah, because, dude, I'm telling you, people are going to be moved by it, dude. The way you articulate your gardens, I'm telling you. I told you when we did one-on-one, I was like, man, we got to do a stream. People are going to love this. It's phenomenal, and the seriousness that you take for your art and your profession, and I know how much it means to you. I know how busy you are too. You're a successful guy at it.
Thank you. Yeah. Some success.
Some success. Well, and more success on the horizon, right?
God willing.
Yes. God willing. But thanks so much, man, for hopping on. Again, for you, Jose, Joseph, Chase, is there anything that you guys would like to leave with the people before hopping off here?
Yes, I'll start. Chase Haggard, I can't let you be on a stream without me coming on and saying hi, brother. I hope you'll come to Butte for the conference after your event, because I would love to see that beautiful, beautiful beard in person.
Yeah, it's always good to see you, man. This year, unless some kind of financial miracle happens, I don't think I'm going to make it. I had 2 months without a job, so that definitely hurt my wallet. But Montanica is going to be incredible this year. David Patrick Harry's a speaker. Father Turbo Qualls. Obviously, Father Deacon Dr. Ananias, other speakers there. I got to go to the first one. Absolutely amazing. If you have the chance to go out there, it's going to be an incredible time.
And I'll just chill for Father Deacon Ananias, but there's going to be a lot of focus on some things for the ladies this year. So we have a female speaker, Abbess Emmeline, I think is how you pronounce it. She's the abbess of a monastery right outside of Maryland. I've heard just amazing things about her, and we have a lot of I see who applies for tickets, and we have a deal for clergy, and there's a lot of sisters that are going to try to come up too. So, and I know there's some organization. I think Rachel may be coming and organizing some stuff for the ladies. So we would encourage that it's going to be very welcoming to all walks of life, clergy, laity,
not
men
all
and women. What was that?
But you make a phenomenal point, Chase, in regards to, because that's a great point to make, though. I have a banner here. So Montanica is June 7th to the 11th in Butte, Montana. But we are absolutely, the goal is to have around 20 female Orthodox ladies. And so young men, you are more than welcome, but the goal is to get more women there. So if you're a man and you're single, this could be an opportunity to meet some women. We are hoping that women can have their own events. We added an extra day to Montanica this year. So Wednesday and Thursday, there's no events. It's just meeting. It's just hanging out. And so we're hoping, again, the goal we're shooting for is 20 women. And obviously there's a lot of guys that are there. Last year we had a couple single women, but it was overwhelming because a lot of the women who came were with a man. Our goal, and Rachel's going to help groups. Again, we have an abbess. There's multiple wives that are going to be there, and our goal is to have at least 20 women there. So it's for men and women, and we definitely want the women to feel comfortable. So they're going to be able to do their own events. I don't know what they do, basket weaving. I don't know. But
flowers.
we are going to drink whiskey, smoke cigars, talk about God. There's a gun range if you guys want to go shooting guns. There's hikes. There's beautiful mountains all around Butte.
I knew you were extremist. I'm just kidding.
I am, yeah.
There's an early bird deal right now on Patristic Faith. So that ends on the 21st. So, it sold out last year.
Keenan says women free admission until 9. Yeah, but that is the goal. We definitely want more, and that's what we want Montanica to be. Is that it's for people who take the faith seriously. It's about taking this whole online Orthodox thing, whatever we're all a part of and participating in right now. Oh, maybe this was the Sid who threw in $40. So it was a female. Sid, I don't know if this was you. You didn't confirm, but I see you in the chat. God bless you, even for being here. Hope you go to Montanica.
Sid's on Twitter. She's guys, go hit her up. She might be single.
Oh, no, don't be flooding the DMs.
I don't know.
But Sid, she said, I thought it was a men's retreat. That is not until August. So there's 2 events. There's an August men's retreat, which really a monastic recruiting retreat. And then Montanica is not that. And we're trying to make Montanica not that. So if you're interested in monasticism, Montanica is not your thing. Montanica is for people that are of the world, that are the laity, that we get to participate in events with clergy. And so we would like to make it more and more and more male, female, and that it's an opportunity for men to go there and meet people in the community and potentially meet women and potentially meet your spouse. That's the goal.
Be Orthodox or Orthodox.
And make it real life.
The theme this year is seek first the kingdom of God. The key speaker is Bishop Maxim. So it's a great blessed event that everyone should try to make it to.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad the ladies liked my subtle joke there. Jose, is there anything you'd like to leave with the people on the topic, life, financial advice, whatever it is, bro?
Financial advice. I'll just say kids are expensive. They're more expensive than you realize. Well, they're cheaper and they're more expensive than you realize. So it's what do you call it? Especially when they're little.
That sounds like a paradox.
Yeah, I know. They don't eat that much. They don't here's the thing, you just have them all share a room. They don't cost much. The only expense really that I face has been just the initial when they're born, and when things go wrong, things get crazy expensive. But yeah, and I look forward to re-listening to the section on gardening. So I've been sadly living in apartments and condos for a decade now, and while I've done lots of container gardens, and I have a boatload of potatoes, growing right now, I look forward to having ground that I can actually put stuff into.
Forgive me.
Well, if Patrick was ever interested, we could unfold that topic more. If you ever wanted to have
I would love to do a stream with it.
Sure. Yeah,
I would definitely be interested. We could get on here and I'll spend time, prepare some stuff. You come on, we do a whole conversation on looking at a biblical view at gardens.
Yeah, I would really enjoy that. And it sounds like maybe other people would too. I'm guessing.
I definitely would.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm definitely down. Let's do that. Let's absolutely do that. Christopher, is there anything else you'd like to leave with the people before hopping off here? In regards to artistry, art, the topic at hand, anything you want to share?
Well, I would say, well, the thing that comes to mind is that art is more common than you think. That art is not necessarily, there is such thing as high art, but art is how we participate in God's creation. And I'm a firm believer of that. And as Patrick is such the fan of, it is the way you dress, it is the way you speak, it's the way you act, it's the way you engage the world, it's the way you pray, it's the way you think. All of that is art. And it's really an intentionality with engaging with God's creation. And, when it gets down to the specifics of the talents and gifts that he's given you, that's just, that's for you to explore and to unfurl as you're offering back to him. So.
Yeah. Well, amen to that. Gentlemen, thanks again. I'm going to kind of wind down this stream. So have a wonderful evening. Thanks everybody for hopping on. God bless you guys. And Christopher, we're definitely going to be doing a stream on guards. I think everybody would love that, and I definitely would too.
All right. Yeah, just reach out.
All right, we'll do.
Have a good one.
All right. Chase, thanks again, brother, for hopping on. Again, your links are in the video description. Everybody smash that like and make sure you share. Brother, thanks for coming on again. Anything you'd like to leave with the people before hopping off here?
No, I think I've done enough talking for for the entire evening. Thanks, guys. Please pray for Patrick, pray for me, pray for everyone that you appreciate their work trying to do apologetics in whatever way. And yeah, thanks for having me on again, Patrick.
Absolutely. Well, guys, I will be back tomorrow at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with the Irishman Uber Boyo to have a little bit of a friendly debate, fiery but friendly debate on Orthodoxy. Was Christianity the woke religion of Rome? So I'm sure you can imagine what my position is on that. And it should be a lot of fun. So I hope to see everybody there tomorrow, 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And as always, until next time, God bless.